Chapter 1319, Break the Record. Chapter 1319, Break the Record. Without hesitation, Feng Wu sat down, crossed her legs, and suppressed her restless spiritual essence as she controlled the abnormal flame. Her head was dizzy, she was in pain, and she felt awful. Feng Wu felt as if she was going to explode. Her spiritual essence was running wild inside her and threatening to break free. Thump, thump, thump. 105. 106. 107. The hammering was like a thunderstorm. Right now the entire mountain was shaking. There were quite a few people in the Rong Manor, and they all looked worried, especially the old steward. Looking up at the sky, Yuan clung tighter to a pillar and asked the old steward, "Sir, has this happened before?" The old steward looked conflicted as he shook his head. Nothing like this has ever happened when the master forged weapons. Looking up, the old steward saw that the sky was covered with dark clouds. Although it was still noon, it was already as dark as night. The entire mountain shook like there was an earthquake. It was so difficult to stay steady that the less capable ones were thrown off their feet. The master has used 107 strikes already. The old steward had been counting, and he was so surprised that his eyes popped out. The master has never used as many as 107 strikes before. If he uses all 108 strikes, how formidable will this weapon be? After working for Master Rong Yang for so many years, the old steward had seen his fair share of weapons. He had a feeling that something big was going to happen today. In the imperial capital, the common folk naturally couldn't hear the formidable hammering, but all the capable cultivators sensed it. The Zhou family, Zhou Ming, the current leader of the Zhou family, heard the noise as well. He was in the imperial palace to discuss some state matters. When he heard the pounding, the 108 hammerings of Master Rong, Zhou Ming's eyes lit up. He wasn't the only one who heard them. Emperor Wu's eyes flickered as well. "Zhou, can you hear that?" Zhou Ming cupped his hands at the emperor and couldn't hide the joy on his face. "Your Majesty, I apologize for being distracted while discussing state matters." Emperor Wu asked, "Wait. Judging by the look on your face, I think you know something that we don't. Would you care to share?" Not many people were in the room, but everyone was a prominent figure in court. There was Jun Linyuan, and Feng Yanfeng, and Master Dugu, and Lord Mu. "The clouds are gathering over that mountain. It has to be Master Rongyang, right?" asked Lord Mu. Zhou Ming cleared his throat. "Lord Mu, that's very perceptive of you." Lord Mu's eyes lit up a little. "Master Rongyang is unparalleled as a weapons maker. Does this noise mean that?" Zhou Ming looked thrilled when he said, "Yes, the master has indeed been working on a piece recently." Master Duga's eyes flickered. "If I'm reading it correctly, Master Rongyang is using his signature hammering technique and has made 107 strikes already. One more strike, and he'll use all 108. Are we going to see a record-breaking weapon?" Northern Feng General's Dragon Spear was completed after 107.5 strikes, and it's already so impressive. All the high-ranking officials were captivated. Chapter 1320 Onlookers. Chapter 1320 Onlookers. Lord Mu looked at Zhou Ming in surprise. "Master Zhou, you seem to know something about it. Is this?" Zhou Ming said humbly. "Well, my mischievous daughter insisted on asking Master Rongyang to forge a weapon for her, but I never thought that she would actually succeed." "So the weapon belongs to your family," said Lord Mu. "Your oldest daughter has returned." "No, it's not Qingwan." Stroking his beard, Zhou Ming chuckled. "It's Qingyu, my second daughter. She was so keen on having a weapon made by Master Rongyang that she took my dragon scale gold, haha." Instantly, a lot of people looked enviously at Zhou Ming. "Master Zhou, congratulations. That's definitely the sign of a formidable weapon. The Zhou family has been receiving good news one after another." Zhou Ming cupped his hands and acted very humbly. "You flatter me." Emperor Wu smiled. "If that's the case, why don't we pay the mountain a visit together and witness the completion of the weapon?" The emperor had spoken, and no one could say no. Moreover, Emperor Wu had the only flying apparatus in the entire empire. It could travel as far as 45,000 kilometers in a day. Needless to say, Emperor Wu brought out the apparatus for the occasion. It was such a rare chance that all the high-ranking officials in the hall decided to take a trip on the flying apparatus. "You're coming with us." Emperor Wu assumed that Jun Linyuan would refuse, so he gave a direct order in a solemn tone. Based on his past experience, his son was so arrogant and unruly that he would most likely say no to such an event. However, the crown prince actually nodded. Yes, he did. Emperor Wu was walking down the stairs when he saw this, and he almost slipped and rolled off. He didn't see that coming at all. Jun Linyuan was simply too obedient today. "You." Emperor Wu stared at Jun Linyuan. "Did you just agree to come with us?" Crossing his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan stood there as his robe flapped in the breeze. He raised his eyebrows when he said, "Why should I refuse?" Why should he? Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. "Because it just isn't like you to agree to go. I'm your father and I know you," thought the emperor. Was it possible that there was another reason besides the obvious? While Emperor Wu was being suspicious of Jun Linyuan, Zuoming smiled and said, "Of course His Royal Highness has to come with us. It'll be our honor." Jun Linyuan raised his dark eyebrows again and gave Zuoming a meaningful look. Unfortunately, Zuoming was too immersed in his joy to notice it. It only took the flying apparatus 15 minutes to get to the mountaintop. The sky was still dark, and the mountain was still shaking. The old steward was frightened to find guests arriving at a moment like this. Emperor Wu was the first one to come out of the flying apparatus. He wore his bright yellow imperial robe. On it, a flying dragon was showing off its claws and fangs. The pattern gave him such an authoritative and intimidating look. Behind him was the crown prince, Master Dugu, Lord Mu Zuoming, Feng Yanfeng. The old steward had lived on the mountain for so long that he had never met any of the big shots here. But Zhuo Qingyu had. She almost fainted when she saw their faces. Her first reaction was to hide, but... "Xiaoyu? Qingyu?" Her father called her name in an excited voice. Zhuo Qingyu wanted to cry. Since she couldn't run away, her only choice was to turn around and greet the emperor. Chapter 1321, An Astonishing Outcome. Chapter 1321, An Astonishing Outcome. Seeing Zhuo Qingyu, who was kneeling on the ground, Zuoming smiled at Emperor Wu. "Your Majesty, this is Zhuo Qingyu, my second daughter." She was the one who insisted on coming to Master Rongyang. "Your Majesty?" The old steward was so shocked that his knees buckled. Emperor Wu nodded. "Good. Your daughter will be rewarded once the formidable weapon is completed." The formidable weapon? Zhuo Qingyu's stomach lurched when she heard those words. Seriously? Emperor Wu had brought all these people here to witness the formidable weapon. Zhuo Qingyu looked up at her father. Zuoming rubbed his chin in satisfaction and nodded at his daughter. Instantly, Zhuo Qingyu felt like passing out. She knew she was doomed. She opened her mouth to say something, but all words failed her. After checking the color of the sky, Zuoming smiled at Zhuo Qingyu. "Xiaoyu, where is Master Rongyang?" With much difficulty, Zhuo Qingyu said, "Master Rongyang is working on the weapon as we speak." Zuoming already knew the answer, but he needed to ask the question to bring up the next one. "You've been in closer proximity to the master than any of us. So tell me, has Master Rongyang hammered it 107 times? That was the last thing Zhuo Qingyu wanted to talk about, but Zuoming wouldn't shut up about it. In her head, Zhuo Qingyu was already screaming. "Yes," said Zhuo Qingyu, clenching her fists. Zuoming glanced at the other officials and smiled. "So it's true. Lord Mu is right." The old steward stared at Zuoming in bewilderment and wondered why Zhuo Qingyu's father looked so happy. He wanted to say something, but then decided that he should keep silent. Feng Yanfeng sounded very envious as he said to Zuoming, "This weapon is going to be so amazing." Northern Feng General's spear was made with 107.5 strikes, but the master may use all 108 strikes with this one. "Master Zhuo, congratulations." Zuoming rubbed his chin and said, "You flatter me." Zhuo Qingyu finally realized what was going on here. Her father really thought that Master Rongyang was building a weapon for the Zhuo family. She wanted to explain, But the emperor was here, and she didn't know what to say. It just so happened that her father wouldn't shut up about it, and he was enjoying all the congratulations so much. Zhuqingyu really wanted to cry now. Right at that moment, there was another loud sound from under the well. In the refinery room underground. Rumble. After a long while, Master Rongyang finally made his 108th strike. This was the first time that he had used all 108 strikes on a weapon. Instantly, he felt the fallen star sword begin to suck up all his spiritual essence. He felt like a winter leaf rapidly losing its vitality. Master Rongyang began to age visibly. He was wasting away as his muscles shriveled up. He had been a white-haired man with a young man's face before, but now, his face was haggard-looking. The sword was draining him of all the spiritual essence he had accumulated over a lifetime. The sword was like a bottomless pit. It was so terrifying. Feng Wu was astonished when she saw what was going on. She tried to pull him away, but as soon as she touched his body, she felt a streak of her spiritual essence being sucked away. Chapter 1322. A Hopeless Situation. Chapter 1322. A hopeless situation. That was crazy. It was too late for Feng Wu to take her hand back now. Whoosh. Soon, Feng Wu was drained of her spiritual essence as well. But she was a little better than Master Rongyang, because she still had a free hand to replenish her spiritual essence. Feng Wu had made a batch of a spiritual essence supplement a while ago, and had given Master Rongyang some this time. Right now she still had about a dozen left. The spiritual essence supplement made by Feng Wu was nothing like those on the market. The amount of spiritual essence in each bottle alone was beyond imagination. 1 bottle, 2 bottles, 3 bottles. Feng Wu felt much more relieved when she drank the supplement. As a result, Master Rongyang's situation improved as well. However, the spiritual essence was consumed shortly after it entered her system. The speed at which she was drained of spiritual essence was terrifying. Even Feng Wu, who could remain unperturbed even in the face of an erupting volcano, had begun to panic. At this speed, the amount of supplement she had wouldn't be enough. 5 bottles, 10 bottles. As time went by, Feng Wu was at a loss over what to do. 15 bottles. Finally, Feng Wu used up all the supplement bottles she had. Rumble. She heard a rumble in her head, and began to faintly sense a little creature inside the fallen star sword. It looked like a tiny human baby with 2 pointy white ears. Right now, it was curled into a ball and sleeping soundly. It was smacking its lips as well. Feng Wu was speechless. She was on the verge of passing out, when she heard Master Rongyang's voice. Hang on, kiddo. You didn't think that a formidable weapon would be that easy to subdue, did you? I made it with all 108 of my signature strikes. This is going to be the most formidable weapon I've ever made. I don't think I'll be able to make anything better for the rest of my life. Feng Wu was astonished by those words. She didn't expect the fallen star sword to be so impressive, which explained why it was so difficult to subdue it. Biting hard on the tip of her tongue, Feng Wu used the pain and the taste of blood in her mouth to rouse herself. She needed spiritual essence. A lot of it. There was no supplement left, but fortunately, she still had a lot of treasures in her ring space. There were formations, spiritual equipment, spiritual plants, spiritual stones, spiritual soil. It was everything Feng Wu had accumulated over the years. But no matter how reluctant she was, she had to draw spiritual essence from them now. Rustle. Feng Wu could sense all her treasures turning into white powder as soon as the spiritual essence was drawn out of them. Her beautiful master and his white jade ice bed remained untouched, because Feng Wu would rather die than bring harm to her master. Time slowly went by. There was nothing left that she could draw spiritual essence from. Feng Wu was overwhelmed with despair. But the fallen star sword was still drawing spiritual essence into it. What on earth did it want? Desperate and frustrated, Feng Wu trembled from head to toe. She had to use her beautiful master's spiritual essence, or she would die. Feng Wu couldn't bring herself to touch her beautiful master, so she gritted her teeth. However, she had reached her limit. The next second, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1323, The Weapon. Chapter 1323, The Weapon. Master Rong Yang gave Feng Wu a suspicious glance. He could sense another source of spiritual essence inside Feng Wu, which she would rather die than draw from. When the spirit of the fallen star sword made another attempt, Feng Wu spat out a mouthful of blood again. Her blood formed a thin mist which scattered all over the sword. The blade that looked like a withered twig at first began to revive, as soon as the blood landed on it. All of a sudden, the tiny sword spirit woke up from its deep sleep, and flew toward Feng Wu's neck at lightning speed. Gurgle. Feng Wu could sense her blood being drained out of her body as she watched. Gone with it was her spiritual essence. Feng Wu could tell that the tiny sword spirit was devouring the spiritual essence in her dantian. Master Rong Yang fell to the ground, and panted after the sword spirit flew out. All his hair had turned white, the skin on his face was sagging, and he looked so tired that he seemed to have aged 10 years. But luckily, his life wasn't in danger anymore. One couldn't say the same for Feng Wu. She turned ghastly pale as the blood and spiritual essence flowed out of her body. She looked so exhausted that she could collapse at any moment. But that wasn't the only thing the sword spirit was doing to her. Right now, Feng Wu felt as though her internal organs were being crushed. She kept vomiting blood until the ground was stained red. It looked very terrifying. Her vision went blurry, and she was losing consciousness. She was about to crash, when the tiny sword spirit was finally satiated. It then flew back into the fallen star sword. The blade then lit up, looking as limpid as clear water, and gave out such dense spiritual essence. Whoosh! The sword then leapt toward the opening of the well. Feng Wu cried out, "My sword." Master Rong Yang took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry, kiddo. It's not going anywhere." After those words, Master Rong Yang dashed off as fast as he could. However, the sword moved much faster than the master. It shot out of the well and charged at the crowd. It had absorbed Feng Wu's blood, but that wasn't enough. The blade cut Zhuo Qingyu's arm open, splashing blood everywhere, before it charged at the old steward. A large crowd had already gathered outside the well. Emperor Wu and the others were sitting in their chairs and waiting for the formidable weapon to come out. However, this grand entrance wasn't what they had expected. Whoosh! Everyone sucked in their breaths when they saw the flying sword. Right at that moment, Zhuo Ming finally reacted and cried out, "That's it! That's the weapon! That's the formidable weapon of my family! Qingyu, order it to stop." The blade had made such a deep gash on her arm that she could barely move. She looked frustrated when she said, "Father, it won't listen to me." "Impossible." Zhuo Ming wouldn't believe it. "It has tasted your blood, which means that there's a blood bond between you and the sword. Just recite the bonding spell." Zhuo Qingyu's stomach lurched. She knew better than anyone else that the fallen star sword belonged to Feng Wu. However, she wondered if the method her father had mentioned would work. Without thinking, Zhuo Qingyu began to make a hand seal as she chanted the words. Chapter 1324. Come back here. Chapter 1324. Come back here. Emperor Wu and the other officials were all astonished when they saw the irritated flying sword in the air. This formidable weapon was quite the character. Zhuo Ming prompted Zhuo Qingyu to subdue the sword, and she did as she was told. She quickly chanted the spell. All eyes were on the sword, and everyone wondered if it would surrender. However, the old steward was flustered. "This isn't right. The weapon belongs to Feng Wu. What's Zhuo Qingyu doing?" To his frustration, the weapon seemed baffled and actually stopped in midair. As Zhuo Qingyu's chanting sped up, it slowly flew toward her. Emperor Wu and the others watched with great interest, and the emperor rubbed his chin and nodded. "What an amazing sword." Lord Mu cupped his hands at Zhuo Ming and said, "Master Zhuo, your family is so blessed. Zhuo Qingwan is already the top teenage cultivator of her generation, and your second daughter seems to be as amazing as her sister." Zhuo Ming humbly expressed his gratitude, but couldn't hide the satisfied smile on his face. Deep down, he was overwhelmed with pride. The fallen star sword was slowly flying towards Zhuo Qingyu, and her eyes lit up with excitement. Just when everyone thought that the sword was going to become Zhuoqingyu's. "Come back here," they heard a furious voice. Everyone jumped at the bellow and turned in the direction of the voice. Feng Wu stood next to the well with her face drained of all color. She was frowning, and the look in her eyes was as sharp as blades. She stared at the weapon in the air. To everyone's astonishment, the sword that was slowly flying towards Zhuoqingyu paused for a moment in the air, before it turned around and flew toward Feng Wu. Everyone was speechless. Zhuoming's face immediately darkened. Zhuoqingyu didn't look any happier than her father. She stared at Feng Wu so hard that her eyes popped out. "Come back here," Zhuoqingyu shouted at the sword as well. But the fallen star sword had recognized Feng Wu as its owner, and no longer responded to Zhuoqingyu's voice. Feng Wu spread open her palm, and the scarlet sword landed in it. The red color disappeared after that, and the sword was silver and bright again. It glistened like flowing water, and was as docile as a sleeping child. Everyone was speechless. Feng Yinfeng's eyes widened. "Feng Wu, you!" Zhuoming's face was darker than a stormy sky. He glared at Feng Wu and bellowed, "Feng Wu, how dare you steal my family's weapon?" Because she had used her own blood to nourish the sword. Feng Wu was ghastly pale at the moment, and felt completely drained. Zhuoming's bellow almost struck her down. Crack! Feng Wu had to thrust the fallen star sword into the ground to steady herself. Zhuoming turned around and stared at Feng Yanfeng. "Master Feng, is this how the Feng family does things? I'm amazed." Feng Yanfeng broke out in a cold sweat. He was one of the lower-ranking officials among these people, and had been feeling nervous, but Feng Wu had just dragged him under the spotlight. Chapter 1325, It's Not Mine? Chapter 1325, It's Not Mine. Feng Yanfeng immediately begged for Zhuoming's forgiveness. He then glared at Feng Wu and bellowed, "Feng Wu, do you have any idea what you're doing? Apologize to Master Zhuo now and hand over the sword." The emperor was right there with them. Was she trying to ruin the entire clan? Feng Wu felt wretched right now. Her head was completely numb from blood loss, as though it was buried under the snow. She was too weak to even lift a finger. She had no strength to look up when Feng Yanfeng scolded her, and could only take in one deep breath after another. Her spiritual essence would eventually recover, but it would take time. After Feng Yanfeng lashed out at Feng Wu, he realized that she was completely ignoring him. Infuriated, he rushed over to her and snatched the fallen star sword away. "This belongs to the Zhuo family." Feng Wu was so weak that she had no strength left to fight back. She even stumbled backward and almost fell to the ground. Feng Yanfeng quickly walked up to Zhuoqingyu and handed her the sword with both hands. He smiled obsequiously and said, "Miss Zhuo, here's your sword." Zhuoqingyu felt conflicted. She knew better than anyone else that Feng Wu was the owner of the sword. However, so many people were watching her now, and she had to stick to her story for the sake of her family's pride. She took the sword with both hands and nodded at Feng Yanfeng. She looked so unperturbed and composed that the others were convinced that it was only right for Feng Wu to give the sword back. The other officials all congratulated Zhuoming for obtaining such a formidable weapon. However, they heard a voice at that moment. "It's my sword." Feng Wu stared at Zhuoqingyu and said coldly. Zhuoqingyu's smile stiffened for a split second, before she snorted. "It's made with the dragon scale gold of my family. How can it be yours?" She was determined to keep the weapon. Feng Wu smiled coldly. "Zhuoqingyu, can you convince yourself with that lie?" Emperor Wu and the others were on their way out, but they stopped when they heard those words and gave Feng Wu strange looks. This was going to be interesting. With the sword in her hand, Zhuoqingyu had no choice but to convince herself that the sword had been rightfully hers from the beginning. As for the servants of the Rong Manor, she was confident that she could silence them all. Zhuoqingyu kept her cold gaze on Feng Wu and asked, "Feng Wu, I've been meaning to ask you. This formidable weapon obviously belongs to my family. So why did you even try to steal it? Who on earth do you think you are?" Feng Wu found her claim preposterous. If she wasn't so weak, she would have given Zhuoqingyu a long speech. Unfortunately, Excruciating pain would run through her body whenever she tried to speak. Emperor Wu frowned, raised an eyebrow, and stared at Feng Wu. Obviously, he knew who Feng Wu was, and for a while, he even thought that she and Jun Linyuan would be a perfect match. However, if she really was the kind of person that Zhuo Qingyu was describing, Emperor Wu shook his head. Feng Wu was so weak that she only managed to squeeze out a few words. "It's not yours. Did you just say that it isn't mine?" Zhuo Qingyu smirked. Chapter 1326. Fallen Star Sword. Chapter 1326. Fallen Star Sword. "If it's yours, why did it fly toward me after it was completed?" Feng Wu smirked. "If it's yours, why did it come back to me?" Zhuo Qingyu's face stiffened. She then smirked and said, "You assisted Master Rong Yang in forging the weapon. Maybe you tampered with it. Who knows? Luckily, you can't keep lying forever. No matter what trick you tried, you can't change the fact that this sword belongs to me." Zhuo Qingyu sounded so righteous that she believed her own lie. The old steward, Yuan, and all the other servants of the Rong Manor gave her strange looks. They had all been there when she made a bet with Feng Wu, and they all knew that the sword should belong to the latter. How could Zhuo Qingyu tell such a blatant lie? Feng Wu was so furious that she laughed, and her bloodless cheeks flushed. "Zhuo Qingyu, I'm so amazed." Zhuo Qingyu smirked. "Are you mocking me now? So tell me this. If this really is your sword, why does it contain my family's dragon scale gold?" Everyone gave Feng Wu strange looks now. Zhuo Qingyu was right. The golden flash on the sword came from the dragon scale gold, something that only the Zhuo family had. So she's Feng Wu. Lord Mu finally recognized that name. Mu Yaoyao had held a grudge against Feng Wu and provoked her repeatedly. However, she had been defeated every single time and had had to drop out of school and go back to Firmament Palace in the end. Naturally, Lord Mu blamed everything on Feng Wu. He glanced at Feng Wu coldly and told Emperor Wu, "I've heard Feng Wu's name before. Yaoyao, my daughter, dropped out of school because of her." Those words instantly changed other people's opinion of Feng Wu. Zhuo Qingyu smirked and was determined to keep the sword. Feng Wu kept her back ramrod straight, opened her right hand and shouted, "Fallen Star Sword, come back!" Fallen Star Sword. Was that the name of the sword? All eyes were on Zhuo Qingyu and the sword in her hand. If the sword belonged to her, it would never answer Feng Wu's summons. However, to their great surprise, the Fallen Star Sword started struggling. No! Zhuo Qingyu grabbed the Fallen Star Sword and held onto it with all her might. The sword was only swaying slightly at first, but the harder Zhuo Qingyu gripped it, the more violently it struggled. "No! I won't let it!" Zhuo Qingyu wrapped her fingers even tighter around the hilt. Bulging blue veins were visible on her forehead and her arms, and her hands shook non-stop. Her face twisted with all the effort. Emperor Wu frowned. As an emperor, he was anything but dumb. It was obvious that the Fallen Star Sword didn't recognize Zhuo Qingyu as its owner. Instead, Zhuo Qingyu was forcing it to stay with her. Crack! Soon, the sword's movements couldn't be controlled. In the end, there was a loud thump. Poor Zhuo Qingyu. She was thrown off balance and fell backward. As everyone watched, the Fallen Star Sword flew toward Feng Wu. It moved at lightning speed and landed in Feng Wu's palm. Chapter 1327. She says it's her Fallen Star Sword. Chapter 1327. She says it's her Fallen Star Sword. The scarlet blade calmed down once it was resting in Feng Wu's palm. The roaring sound faded until it completely disappeared. Everyone was speechless. "Feng Wu, give me back my Fallen Star Sword. Give it back to me." Zhuo Qingyu pounced at Feng Wu and tried to hit her. She looked like she had lost her mind. Feng Wu only sneered at her in silence. A murderous look flickered in Zhuo Ming's eyes, and he glared at Feng Wu. "Feng Wu, are you going to declare war against the Zhuo family now?" Feng Wu only smirked. "I see. You're the first person who has dared to ignore me like this. No one will blame me for killing you then." Zhuo Ming raised a hand, and a streak of cold light shot at Feng Wu's face. Jun Linyuan had kept his silence the entire time, but he was also watching Feng Wu closely. He wondered how stubborn the girl could be. The Zhou family had cornered her, but she still wouldn't ask for his help. One word from her, and he would stand up for her. As frustrated as the crown prince was, he couldn't bring himself to see Fengwu hurt. Hence, as soon as Zhou Ming took action, the crown prince stepped out. However, someone else got there first. Master Rong Yang had finally climbed out of the well on trembling legs. The first thing he saw was the sharp object flying toward Fengwu, so he struck down at it with his walking stick. It was no ordinary walking stick. Thump! It hit the flying weapon and made a loud clang, sending sparks everywhere. The noise shocked everyone. Master! Seeing his master, the old steward ran to his side immediately. Instantly, everyone turned to look at Master Rong Yang. All his hair had turned snowy white, his skin was sagging, and he looked at least 10 years older. Even Emperor Wu looked surprised. He couldn't believe that this man was the Master Rong Yang he knew. Zhou Qingyu blanched as soon as she saw Master Rong Yang. Her heart pounded, but she still wouldn't give up hope. Master Rong Yang owed the Zhou family a favor, which was why he had agreed to help Zhou Qingyu when she showed up at his door. Zhou Qingyu prayed in her heart that Master Rong Yang would show her family some consideration. He didn't have to take her side. All he had to do was keep his silence. But Zhou Qingyu was soon disappointed, because right now, Master Rong Yang was glaring at Zhou Ming. Zhou Ming had always considered himself a friend of the master, so he frowned and asked, Master Rong Yang, what did you do that for? Master Rong Yang bellowed, that's my question. What did this girl do? Why are you trying to kill her? Realizing why the master was angry, Zhou Ming smirked. Master, you weren't here earlier. This girl is unbelievable. She's saying that this fallen star sword belongs to her. How ridiculous is that? Ridiculous? Zhou Ming was ridiculous. Master Rong Yang glared at Zhou Ming and asked, what's ridiculous about that? Zhou Ming snorted. This formidable weapon belongs to the Zhou family, and Zhou Qingyu, my daughter, has formed a bond with it. This girl just tried to take it away, and even claims it's hers. Master Rong Yang, don't you find that preposterous? Chapter 1328. Whose sword is it? Chapter 1328. Whose sword is it? Master Rong Yang looked stunned. He then stared at Zhou Ming with a strange look on his face before shifting his gaze to Zhou Qingyu. For a moment, everyone just stood there in silence and looked at Master Rong Yang. What was happening? When Master Rong Yang finally spoke again, he asked, what did you say? Your fallen star sword? Zhou Ming asked, am I wrong to say that? Master Rong Yang said, and you say that Zhou Qingyu has bonded with it. Zhou Ming said, did I say something wrong? Of course you did. Master Rong Yang still felt very weak, but because of his rage, he bellowed at the top of his lungs. What? Everyone cried out in surprise. They hadn't expected to hear that from Master Rong Yang at all. Master Rong Yang, what's going on? Emperor Wu sounded confused. Only then did Master Rong Yang notice the Emperor. Your Majesty? Master Rong Yang looked bewildered. Emperor Wu nodded at him and asked, so tell us, who does this sword belong to? Master Rong Yang said righteously, of course it belongs to Fengwu. That answer shocked everyone. Everyone had been making guesses based on Master Rong Yang's reaction, but they were still astonished to hear that reply from him. What? Lord Mu and the others exchanged bewildered looks. Feng Yanfeng was stunned. He had just been told that the formidable weapon belonged to Fengwu. That's impossible. More than one person objected, but Zhou Ming was the most astonished of them all. He ran over to Master Rong Yang and glared at him. Nonsense! You have no idea what you're talking about. Master Rong Yang was in a bad mood, and Zhou Ming's bellow only irritated him further. He yelled, I made the weapon myself. How can I not know whose it is? You old fool. You, Zhou Ming shook with rage. If Master Rong Yang was telling the truth, what Zhou Ming had done so far would make him look like a clown. How was he supposed to face his colleagues from now on? Zhou Ming was still hesitating when he looked up and saw Zhou Qingyu. She was trying to sneak off. Before she could do so, her father rushed over and grabbed her by the shoulder. Zhou Qingyu, Give me an explanation. Tell them that the fallen star sword belongs to our family. Zhuo Qingyu's face had turned scarlet red, and she looked utterly ashamed. If the ground opened up at that moment, she would jump in without hesitation. Father. Speak. Hasn't the sword bonded with you? What are you waiting for? Tell me. Zhuo Ming was losing his patience. Zhuo Qingyu wanted to bite her tongue off. Had she known that things would turn out this way, she would never have made a claim on the sword. Right now, she was in such an awkward situation. Say something. Zhuo Ming sounded very anxious. Right now, all eyes were on Zhuo Qingyu. What should she do? Was she doomed? Zhuo Qingyu looked at Feng Wu and saw how unperturbed she was. That woman. How could she always look so level-headed? Chapter 1329. Do you think I'm blind? Chapter 1329. Do you think I'm blind? It's Feng Wu's sword. It's her. Hers. Zhuo Qingyu suddenly yelled. Instantly, everyone began to give her strange looks. So it really was Feng Wu's sword. Didn't you say that it's yours? Lord Mu had been waiting for Feng Wu's downfall as well, so he tried to urge Zhuo Qingyu. Kiddo, don't you worry. Just tell us the truth. No one can threaten you. I've got your back. Zhuo Qingyu smiled bitterly. Master Rongyang had shown up, and the fallen star sword had flown back to Feng Wu. Nothing she said would be able to change the situation. Compared with telling more lies, she would rather. Feng Wu is right. It really is her sword. I made a mistake. Zhuo Qingyu told the truth. Zhuo Ming immediately flushed. His head spun, and he wanted to pass out right at that moment. He had mentioned his family's formidable weapon in court, which was why the emperor and the others had come here with him. He had wanted to show off, only to be humiliated. Zhuo Ming felt like killing Zhuo Qingyu. You defiant girl. I'm going to kill you. Zhuo Ming raised a hand, trying to hit Zhuo Qingyu. Zhuo Qingyu burst into tears and bawled. Instead of running away, she took Zhuo Qingyu's arm and said, She took the dragon scale gold from me. It was her. Zhuo Ming's face turned livid. He then stared at Feng Wu. Is that true? Feng Wu was so weak that she had to lean on the sword to stop herself from falling over. A smile emerged on her pale face when she saw how aggressive Zhuo Ming was being. Are you all against me because I have no one else? Zhuo Ming was infuriated. The crown prince stood proudly in the crowd, but felt a throbbing pain in his chest when he heard those words. Involuntarily, he looked in Feng Wu's direction, and there was concern in his eyes which even he wasn't aware of. Feng Wu acted as though Jun Linyuan wasn't there. Staring at Zhuo Ming, she took out a piece of paper and threw it at his face. Here's the bet I made with Zhuo Qingyu. It says that if I lose, I'll do one thing for her. But if she loses, I'll have the dragon scale gold. All the members of the Rong Manor are my witnesses. The paper drifted down in front of Zhuo Ming. Zhuo Qingyu panicked. That's impossible. We never signed anything. Zhuo Qingyu lost her head in her panic, and she yelled at Feng Wu. We never wrote our bet down. Feng Wu suddenly chuckled. So, are you saying that you're going to deny it just because our bet was a verbal one? Zhuo Qingyu was speechless. Immediately, everyone gave Zhuo Qingyu strange looks. When Zhuo Ming caught the paper, he saw that it was blank. However, everyone realized that Zhuo Qingyu had lost. The things she blurted out were proof enough of Feng Wu's claim. Zhuo Qingyu still wanted to make more excuses, but just then Master Rongyang smirked. Zhuo Qingyu, have you forgotten about me? Do you think I'm blind? Chapter 1330, No Fighting for Now. Chapter 1330, No Fighting for Now. Master Rongyang was the most convincing witness. You've inverted justice, made up groundless rumors and told shameless lies. I've never met a brazen-faced young woman like you before. Because Master Rongyang was very angry, he chose the harshest words he could think of. Each word was like a whip to Zhuo Qingyu's face. She turned pale and trembled from head to toe. Zhuo Ming was so furious that he was speechless. Master Rongyang was such an influential figure in the empire. If his comments about Zhuo Qingyu got out, not only would Zhuo Qingyu's reputation be ruined, the other girls of the Zhuo family would be incriminated as well. Master. Ming spoke up involuntarily, but Master Rongyang only scolded. You're no better. The old man said angrily. You're the head of a clan, for God's sake. You should know better. Not only did you give a false account of the truth, you also threatened a teenage girl as well. Are you proud of yourself? Ming was utterly humiliated by those words. His face had turned scarlet red, but he couldn't retort to any of the things the old man said. After all, Master Rongyang belonged to Ming's father's generation, and he couldn't confront a senior. Master Rongyang was still angry. Feng Wu and I forged this fallen star sword together, so remember this. If anyone tries to take the sword away from her, they'll have me to answer to. You've been warned. Feng Wu was deeply touched. She was still weak, but the fallen star sword was so formidable that other people were bound to slaver after it. At least the Zhou family would. With Master Rongyang's warning, she would be much safer. Master Rongyang then looked up at Emperor Wu. Come inside. I need to talk to you. Emperor Wu was also considered a junior to Master Rongyang. His father, the late emperor, was Master Rongyang's best friend, and the old man had always considered the emperor his nephew. Therefore, Emperor Wu had to do as he was told. You too. Master Rongyang cast a stern look at the crown prince, who had remained silent the entire time. Once they went inside, Master Rongyang set up a barrier, so that no one could hear what they were talking about. In the yard, Zhuo Qingyu glared at Feng Wu with eyes filled with hatred. Feng Wu stood there, looking as proud as ever. Her clothes flapped in the wind, making her look even slimmer. She reminded one of new grass in the spring, refreshing but very tenacious. But in fact she was in a miserable state. Most of her spiritual essence had been sucked away by the fallen star sword, and she was barely able to stand. She started to lose consciousness, and her vision turned blurry. Xiao Wu! Xiao Wu! When she heard the familiar voice, her legs gave in, and she collapsed. It seemed forever when Feng Wu woke up again, but her head was still muddled. She regained consciousness before she opened her eyes, and she could hear some familiar voices. Is Xiao Wu still unconscious? Yes. It's been days, and we don't know when she'll wake up. The imperial physician says that she's in really bad shape. She shouldn't be fighting anytime soon. But she still has that Dragon's Gate challenge. What should we do now? Chapter 1331 Life and Death. Chapter 1331 Life and Death. Those were Chaoge's and Feng Sun's voices. Something stirred in Feng Wu's muddled mind. The fallen star sword, Master Rongyang, Chief Qiao, the Dragon's Gate, the broken star piece. As they came back to her one after another, Feng Wu bolted up from the bed, and there was a crash. In her haste, Feng Wu had knocked a teacup off the bedside table. The noise immediately alarmed the two people outside. Chaoge and Feng Sun rushed into the room. Before they reached her, Feng Wu had already rushed over to them in a frantic state. She grabbed Feng Sun by the collar and yelled, "How long have I been out for? Xiao Wu, are you all right?" Feng Sun had never seen Feng Wu so agitated. "Just tell me. How long? I need an answer." Feng Wu was almost in tears. She was so anxious. The making of Fallen Star Sword had cost her 6 days, and she was supposed to challenge the Dragon's Gate on the 7th, but she passed out at Master Rongyang's place. How long was I unconscious for? Feng Wu was flustered. She had 10 days to finish the 4th trial, and if she failed, that broken star piece would. Feng Wu almost lost her mind when she thought about that possibility. 5 days, that's how long you were out for, Feng Sun said hastily, fearing that she might actually throttle him. 5 days. So today is the 11th day already. Feng Wu's eyes were wide open. Her clear, bright eyes looked a little scary now. Feng Sun was baffled. What 11th day? Feng Wu was too weak to speak. She fell back into the chair, and felt so defeated that she almost passed out again. Feng Sun and Chaoge were both terrified. Xiao Wu, are you all right? Don't scare us. Xiao Wu, what do you mean by the 11th day? What's going on? Feng Wu looked like she had just lost her soul. She sat there in a trance-like state with no expression on her face. The 11th day. How could it be the 11th day? She had failed the trial, and the broken star piece was gone forever. Right now Feng Wu felt like killing someone. Feng Sun was terrified. Xiao Wu, I was only kidding. You weren't unconscious for that long. You've been out for 4 days tops. Chowga said. It's more like 3 days and a bit. We're still 2 hours from midnight now. The 4th day hasn't started yet. A little more than 3 days. Feng Wu's eyes lit up when she heard those words. Her face was animated once again. A little more than 3 days? Is that what you said? Feng Wu's grip was so tight that it left bruises on Feng Sun's wrist. But he didn't even grunt, because he knew that Feng Wu wasn't in her right mind. He smiled bitterly. 3 days, 4 days, what difference does it make? What difference? To Feng Wu, it was the difference between life and death. Feng Wu knew that she couldn't panic now. She had to calm down, or she would regret it for the rest of her life. Taking a deep breath, she asked calmly, What time is it now? Chowga and Feng Sun exchanged bewildered looks when they saw how serious Feng Wu had become, and Feng Sun said, It's 4 quarters past the time of high, so 10 o'clock at night. Transmigrators had arrived in this world before, which was why the way of counting time here was quite similar to Feng Wu's original world. Chapter 1332, The Final Moment. Chapter 1332, The Final Moment. 10 o'clock at night. So I have 2 hours left. Feng Wu took a deep breath to calm down. I still have time, right? The question was directed at the peach blossom fairy in her head. However, the fairy only gave Feng Wu a strange but piteous look without saying a word. Just tell me, do I still have 2 more hours? Feng Wu glared at her. The fairy was a little frightened. Pursing her lips, she looked at Feng Wu and nodded. Yes, but you'll never be able to finish it in 2 hours. Why didn't you wake me up? Feng Wu tried to suppress her anger. The broken star piece was something she valued more than her own life. The fairy glanced at Feng Wu and said quietly, I tried, but you just wouldn't wake up. Listen, my throat is raw from all the shouting. God knew how flustered she had been when Feng Wu remained unconscious and wouldn't respond to her calling. Fine. We'll talk about it later. My top priority now is to finish the task. Feng Wu took a deep breath. Xiao Wu? Chowga and Feng Sun exchanged looks, because they realized that Feng Wu's mind had wandered off again. Feng Wu snapped out of her reverie and told Feng Sun, I'm going to take the Dragon's Gate challenge now. Feng Sun couldn't believe what he had just heard, and he yelled at Feng Wu, Are you out of your mind? Do you know what time it is now? It's almost midnight. Feng Wu grabbed him and said anxiously, I don't care. I need to do it now. I can't wait. Feng Sun shook his head. It's not going to happen. Feng Wu was already heading out. Feng Sun immediately stopped her. Little Feng Wu, are you crazy? You've missed your appointment, and Chief Chiao won't let you do it anymore. What Feng Sun didn't tell Feng Wu was that people had been talking about her challenge, and many had bet on the outcome. Some had bet on her success and others on her failure, but no one had anticipated that she would give up. People in the imperial capital had been saying the nastiest things about Feng Wu, and Chowga didn't dare to repeat them to her. Feng Wu had no idea of any of that. She only stared at Feng Sun and asked, What if I insist? Are you in such a rush? Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu said in a serious tone, What if I tell you that I'll be dead if I don't pass the Dragon's Gate challenge in the next 2 hours? Is it that serious? Feng Sun couldn't believe what he just heard. Feng Wu nodded. Yes, that's serious. Feng Sun looked into her eyes and saw that she meant it. Wait, let me think. Feng Sun rubbed his chin and racked his brain. He said, Chief Chiao set up the Dragon's Gate, but you were still unconscious and missed the appointment. Chief Chiao was so mad that he said that he wouldn't give you another chance. Feng Wu was speechless. Feng Sun walked back and forth in the room. Chief Chiao is known for his quick temper, and once he's made up his mind, no one can change it. 1. Chapter 1333, His Royal Highness heard it. Chapter 1333, His Royal Highness heard it. Wait, the old master has come out of seclusion by now, right? I'll go talk to him. Feng Wu smacked her forehead and cried out. By the old master. She meant Grand Secretary Feng. No, he hasn't. Feng Sun's words shattered Feng Wu's hopes. It seemed something came up, and he's going to be in seclusion for a few more days. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead and wondered why disasters always happened one after another. I'm going to talk to Chief Chiao now. Feng Wu ran toward the door. However, Feng Sun stopped her before she could leave. Do you know where he lives? Feng Wu shook her head. Do you know how much Chief Chiao hates you now? Feng Wu was speechless. How are you going to persuade him? Feng Wu was speechless. After she calmed down, Feng Wu finally realized how difficult the situation was. I'll go find Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu said without hesitation. Feng Wu considered Master Rong Yang, Master Dugu, or even Emperor Wu, but Jun Linyuan seemed to be the best candidate. Staring at Feng Sun, Feng Wu said rapidly, Jun Linyuan is without doubt an influential figure. As long as he puts in a word for me, no matter how reluctant Chief Chiao is, he'll have to say yes. Feng Sun asked, Are you so sure that Boss Jun can make that happen? Feng Wu gave Feng Sun a strange look. Trust me, Jun Linyuan can do it. If he can't, no one can. Feng Sun looked intrigued and asked Feng Wu, So that's how impressive you find Boss Jun. Then why do you always offend him? Why did you say you don't like him? Feng Wu snorted. Of course Jun Linyuan is an impressive figure. The entire continent knows that, and I'm not blind. But you know how snappy he is. Well, about that Xiao Wu actually Feng Sun was cut off before he could go on. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu said, That's why I have to persuade Jun Linyuan. Tell me where he is now. Time was of the essence here. She only had less than 2 hours left. With each passing second, her chances of finishing the trial diminished. Boss Jun is. Before Feng Sun could finish, they heard someone clearing his throat outside the door. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Chaoga nudged Feng Wu with her elbow. Xiao Wu, look. She gestured at the door. The door opened by itself to reveal a tall figure. Feng Wu was dumbfounded as soon as she saw who it was. The teenager had his back to them. Dressed in a white robe, the teenager was tall and elegant. The silver moonlight poured over him, reminding one of an immortal descending to this world. It was none other than Jun Linyuan himself. Feng Wu was dumbfounded, and she bit her lips so hard that it almost bled. She glared at Feng Sun and asked with her eyes, Has Jun Linyuan been there this whole time? Feng Sun shrugged. It was true. He had done it on purpose. Feng Wu was speechless. That was to say, Jun Linyuan had heard all her comments just then. Feng Wu was speechless. She had never blushed so hard before. Her cheeks turned pink, and she wrung her fair, slender fingers together. She didn't know what to do. Chapter 1334. Who in the Jumwu Empire can stop him? Chapter 1334. Who in the Jumwu Empire can stop him? Feng Sun was the one to break the silence. He smiled and said, Boss Jun, what a coincidence. What are you doing here in the middle of the night? The crown prince raised an eyebrow and coughed into his fist. He then turned around and shifted his brooding gaze to Feng Wu. His flickering eyes reminded her of a starry sky. Feng Wu bit her lower lip and remained silent. She really didn't know what to do and felt so embarrassed. The teenager was still looking at Feng Wu. The look in his eyes was usually indifferent, but it was full of excitement now. He waved at Feng Wu. Come over here. Feng Wu bit her lower lip, looked down, and clenched her fists. Just go. Feng Sun gave Feng Wu a little push toward Jun Linyuan, and reminded her. Don't you want to take the Dragon's Gate challenge? And didn't you say Boss Jun is the only one who can help you? He's here now, so it's up to you if he'll help you or not. Feng Wu had nothing to say. While Feng Wu was still fidgeting, Jun Linyuan raised an eyebrow and gave her a meaningful look. Go get ready. Huh? Feng Wu looked confused. The challenge will start in 15 minutes. Can you do it? Jun Linyuan's eyes were clear and bright. 15 minutes. Feng Wu grabbed Jun Linyuan's arm in excitement, her eyes sparkling. Yes, that's great. All right. The crown prince's face was expressionless, but his eyes twinkled a little, making him even more handsome. Feng Wu looked curiously at Jun Linyuan and waited for him to go to Chief Chiao. She was about to prompt him when he glanced at her and said, "Give me a pen and some paper." Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Qiuling reacted first and soon fetched the things he needed. The crown prince started writing a letter with casual strokes. His eyes glittered as he wrote. Feng Sun then took the letter and ran off after saying, "I'm going to see Chief Chiao right now." Only then did Feng Wu see the light. Jun Linyuan didn't need to talk to Chief Chiao himself. If he did, that man would probably be terrified to death. "Let's go." Jun Linyuan strode off on his long legs, looking every bit as a ruler should. Feng Wu immediately followed him. Feng Wu couldn't enter initial whenever she wanted, because she wasn't a year 2 student yet. As for the crown prince, Feng Wu was about to remind Jun Linyuan about what he had to do to get in, when she saw him swipe a finger through the air. The barrier blocking the entrance split open, as though it was made of paper, revealing a passageway wide enough for a person to walk through. Feng Wu was speechless. Jun Linyuan was indeed as amazing as he was said to be. Could anyone in the Jemwu Empire stop him? Shortly after Feng Wu entered, Chief Chiao arrived hastily together with Feng Sun. Qiaoyi was with them as well. Chief Chiao seemed infuriated when he saw Feng Wu, and there was a faint smirk on his face. However, his attitude changed completely when he saw Jun Linyuan. "Your Royal Highness." Chapter 1335, As You Wish. Chapter 1335, As You Wish. Chief Chiao walked up to the stunning teenager and greeted him respectfully. He was the ruler of Initial, but he was nothing compared with the future ruler of the empire. From this angle, the crown prince's face looked like a perfect sculpture. Right now, there was no expression on it, and he darted an indifferent glance at Chief Chiao. "Let's begin." The crown prince was used to treating people in this indifferent manner. Even now, when he was asking for Chief Chiao's help, he was still very unapproachable. Chief Chiao smiled bitterly. "Your Royal Highness, since you've made the request, no one can decline but..." "Yes." Jun Linyuan frowned a little and gave Chief Chiao a cold glance. Chief Chiao gave him a wry smile. "Your Royal Highness, as you may know, the Dragon's Gate challenge comes in different levels. That is normal, difficult, elite, and hell. Because Miss Feng booked the challenge without specifying a level, I opened them all. However, Miss Feng missed her appointment and wasted a lot of energy in the process. Your Royal Highness, you know that once the Dragon's Gate is opened, it can't be opened again for the next 7 days." Chief Chiao shrugged. "Therefore, Your Royal Highness, it's not that I won't open the gate. I can't." Instantly, a hush fell over the crowd. Qiaoyi had lowered her head to hide the gloating smile on her face. She wasn't the only onlooker here. His Royal Highness is here. The news had grown wings, and soon, everyone in Initial knew about it. A lot of Year 2 students had been cultivating around the clock, and had never heard of Feng Wu's name before, nor did they know about her recent achievements. Hence, they had no interest in her. However, they were excited by the news that Jun Linyuan was here, so they rushed over as soon as they could. Xu Yinrua, the senior student Feng Wu had met before, was here. So were all the members of Tiger Head. More people kept gathering round. However, the Dragon's Gate still wasn't open. Feng Wu was worried sick, and kept asking the fairy how much time she had left. The fairy was as anxious as she was, and she immediately said, "You have 70 minutes left." Feng Wu cursed inwardly. Seeing her reaction, for the first time in his life, Jun Linyuan explained things to another person. He told her, the Dragon's Gate can't be opened twice in 7 days. Putting a long face, Feng Wu tugged at his sleeve and looked eagerly at him. He was her last resort. Looking into Feng Wu's eyes, Jun Linyuan asked, "Do you have to do it?" Feng Wu nodded repeatedly. "Yes. No matter how dangerous it may be." Feng Wu went on nodding. "Yes. And you have to do it now." Feng Wu nodded affirmatively again. Jun Linyuan saw that she was determined, and the look on his face turned stern. He slowly walked up to the Dragon's Gate. The Dragon's Gate, was a building that reminded one of a dragon's palace. The front gate was a gigantic dragon's head, and the glint in its eyes could give one the creeps. The head was man-made, but those eyes were genuine dragon's eyes. Then Jun Linyuan. Chapter 1336. Does she have a choice? Chapter 1336. Does she have a choice? Jun Linyuan stepped out and swept his wide sleeve across the dragon's head. The next second, the shining eyes closed. Wow! Everyone stared at the crown prince in disbelief. Even Chief Qiao's eyes widened. He mumbled, "Aren't those eyes supposed to be open forever? How's that possible?" To everyone's further surprise, there was a loud bang after the light in the eyes went out. After that, they saw a ring of misty white light. Jun Lingyuan's eyes flickered in the dark, and he asked Feng Wu earnestly, "This is the insane level. Are you bold enough to try it?" Insane level. Everyone was astonished. The Dragon's Gate challenge was supposed to consist of 4 levels: normal, difficult, elite, and hell. Where did this new level come from? Feng Wu was surprised as well. It was called insane, which suggested how difficult it was. It would probably drive her insane. 60 minutes left, the fairy reminded Feng Wu in her head. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. Beggars couldn't be choosers. She had no time to be picky about the level of difficulty now. At that thought, Feng Wu nodded solemnly. "I'll do it. Enter." The crown prince was always very laconic when there were other people around. If Feng Wu looked closely, she would notice that the hand which Jun Linyuan was covering the dragon's eyes with was trembling slightly. But she didn't see it. She quickly stepped into the ring of light and vanished. "Boss Jun." When Jun Linyuan drew back his hand, Feng Sun immediately saw that his palm was charred, and he could smell burnt flesh. "Boss Jun, you." Feng Sun took a step forward, trying to take a closer look. However, the crown prince frowned and shot a warning glance at him. Feng Sun paused in embarrassment. His lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. Just then, "Look!" someone cried out. After Jun Linyuan put his hand down, they could see Feng Wu's image in the dragon's eyes. To be more precise, the eyes were showing what Feng Wu was doing inside. That was to say, everyone could see Feng Wu taking the challenge. Look, she's in Trial 1, and she's already in danger. The Dragon's Gate was where Year 2 students took their tests, so they were very familiar with the normal level. At the normal level, the Dragon's Gate consisted of just 3 trials, and those new to Year 2 could roam this level only. The difficult level consists of 6 trials. There are 9 trials at the elite level and 12 at the hell level. Does that mean that there are 15 trials at this insane level? All the members of Tiger Head were there. Tao Hu, Gu Honglang, and Leng Hu all held a grudge against Feng Wu, and right now, they were staring at the dragon's eyes. Does she think she can survive this insane level? That's just preposterous. No one had any faith in Feng Wu, especially Leng Hu. Her arms had recovered, and right now, she was smirking with her arms crossed. Gu Honglang sneered as well. Who does she think she is? The insane level? If you ask me, the normal level is already difficult enough for her. Chapter 1337, Count Me In. Chapter 1337, Count Me In. That's right. She can only belong to the normal level. Leng Hu snorted. Chaoga flared up. Hey you, which level can you do? Leng Hu threw a dirty look at Chaoga. The difficult level. Why? Chaoga smirked. I defeated you before. If you can take the difficult level, why should Xiao Wu only be good enough for the normal level? You think too highly of yourself. You, Leng Hu glared at Chaoga. Chaoga raised her chin. Fight me, I dare you. Now that Feng Wu was away, Leng Hu wasn't intimidated by Chaoga. However, she saw Feng Sun narrow his eyes. Young Lord Feng was usually a friendly person who liked to joke around, but when he got angry, he could be almost as terrifying as the crown prince. Seeing Feng Sun standing behind Chaoga, Leng Hu was reminded of their interactions before, so she bit her lower lip and glared at Chaoga. You won't trick me. Chaoga smirked. Would you like to make a bet then? Leng Hu asked. On what? Chaoga smiled. Didn't you say that Xiao Wu is only good enough for the normal level? If she makes it to the difficult level, I win. You'll have to kneel down in front of me and admit your mistake. If I lose, I'll do the same. Leng Hu was baffled. She had only said those things in passing to vent her jealousy. Judging from what Leng Hu had seen so far of Feng Wu's performance, she knew that Feng Wu was probably capable enough to make it to the elite level. I'm not taking that bet. It's so childish. Leng Hu refused. Chao smirked. Coward. Just then another voice rang out. I'll take the bet. Chao turned around to discover Qiao Yi. Qiao Yi had come here in such a rush that she only wore a thin dress. Her face was pale from the chilly night air, but she was very excited. I'll take the bet. I bet you that Feng Wu can go no further than the elite level. Do you dare bet against me? By taking a bet with Qiao Yi was ignoring the fact that she was a teacher, and many students found her behavior rather inappropriate. Qiao smirked. Sure. Why not? Xiao Wu is going to make it to the insane level, anyway, because she's insanely capable. The insane level. Everyone stared at Duan Qiao as though they were looking at an idiot. Was she nuts? Count me in. Me too. And me. Many students spoke in taunting voices, and most of them were girls. They saw with their own eyes that the crown prince himself had helped Feng Wu go in, and because of that they felt so frustrated. Finally, there was a way for them to vent that anger. What are your stakes then? Qiao asked confidently. The question stumped the others, but Tao Hu smirked and said, I would say my points, but I don't think you can afford to lose any of yours. Points were used as a type of currency and initial. With them, one could buy anything they wanted, as long as they could find it here. Qiao didn't have any of those points. She doesn't have any, but I do. Feng Sun broke the silence and stepped out. He then patted Qiao's shoulder. Go get some pen and paper to write down their names. I'll pay for you if you lose. Qiao Yi was dumbfounded and heartbroken to hear that. She had always considered Feng Sun as a potential future husband for herself, but as it turned out, he was on Feng Wu's side. Chapter 1338 Infatuation. Chapter 1338 Infatuation. The others were displeased to see Feng Sun take Feng Wu's side as well. As a result, many people doubled the points they were using as their stakes. More Year 2 students kept gathering round, until almost all of them were there. They then asked Qiao for the final result, so she did some calculations. She asked Feng Sun, are 100,000 points a lot? The points were quite valuable. With 1 point, one could rent a cultivation room for an hour. And they were very hard to earn. Even the top student in the monthly test would only be rewarded with 100 points. 100,000? Feng Sun was a little surprised. He didn't realize so many people held grudges against Feng Wu. He checked the list, and saw that most of the students had bet that Feng Wu wouldn't be able to make it to the elite level. Only 2 people actually thought that she could enter the hell level. And those 2 people were Xu Yunhua and Chang Xuequan. As for the insane level, no one thought Feng Wu was that good. Feng Sun smiled. I guess the house will take it all this time. Young Lord Feng, do you think that Miss Feng Wu can make it to the insane level? Someone asked indifferently. Feng Sun looked up, and found the man a little familiar. And you are? He narrowed his eyes. I'm Yin Xiaoning, and I was 15th in the last monthly test. The expression on the teenager's face was as indifferent as his voice. Feng Sun smiled. 15th. I see. Yin Xiaoning met Feng Sun's eyes. But I was stopped at the elite level, and wasn't able to enter the hell level. Young Lord Feng, do you think Miss Feng is more capable than I am? Everyone fell silent, and all they could hear was the howling wind. Even Yin Xiaoning, the 15th student in Year 2, couldn't make it to the hell level. How could Feng Wu succeed? She had just left Year 1, and hadn't been accepted into Year 2 yet. After hearing Yin Xiaoning's question, everyone began to give Duan Qiao strange looks. They were even more convinced that Feng Wu was going to lose. Excuse me, may I raise my stake? Someone asked gingerly. Qiao picked up her pen. Of course. Feng Sun sighed in resignation. He wondered if the girl had lost her mind. How could she agree to raise the stakes? Had she forgotten that Feng Wu couldn't actually pass the insane level? However, Chaoga had said yes, and there was nothing else Feng Sun could do. He rubbed his forehead. Fine, fine. Bring it on. Put in as much as you want. Although Feng Wu had no points, Boss Jun had plenty of them. In the end, Boss Jun was going to be the one to pay the debt, so Feng Sun decided that he shouldn't be worried. He grinned at Boss Jun. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince. He had been standing there since Feng Wu went in. Crossing his hands behind his back, he looked as handsome as a deity. He kept his unblinking gaze on Feng Wu. He had deep-set features, a chiseled jaw and flawless skin. He was so stunning. No matter how big the crowd was, one could always pick him out right away. He was simply too spectacular. He was born with this charisma. It wasn't something that could be obtained with learning. Many young men were looking at Feng Wu through the dragon's eyes, but almost all the girls were staring at Jun Linyuan with infatuated looks on their faces. Chapter 1339, How naive of you. Chapter 1339, How naive of you. The girls were frustrated when they saw the way Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu, so they raised their stakes again. After Chaoga finally added up the numbers, her eyes twinkled like stars. Wow, I'm going to be rich. Feng Sun gave her a strange look. How many points are we talking about here? 500,000. Teehee, Chaoga was thrilled. However, Feng Sun couldn't bring himself to smile anymore. The odds of 2 to 1 meant that he would have to pay 1,000,000 points if he lost. Look! Someone cried out at that moment. Feng Wu had started fighting. The first 3 trials formed the normal level. As soon as Feng Wu entered, she found herself in a foggy place. There was mist everywhere, and visibility was very low. Arhu! A lone wolf howled. Before Feng Wu could react, a strong wolf charged at her at a tremendous speed. Its speed was unbelievable. However, it might be lightning speed to other people, but in Feng Wu's eyes, the wolf was moving in slow motion. The wolf leapt and pounced at Feng Wu. Thump! Feng Wu raised a leg and kicked the wolf in its belly when it was still in midair. Thump! The wolf wailed in pain and was kicked away into the distance. Crash! It crashed to the ground and whimpered. Its body twitched in pain, but it could no longer stand up. Feng Wu looked past the wolf and headed for a spiral staircase, which led her to the second trial. My family will make you pay for this, the wolf roared. Soon, Feng Wu reached the next floor. The wolf wasn't bluffing, because Feng Wu now faced 2 strong wolves with glossy fur. They were glaring at Feng Wu. They were the parents of that lone wolf. Did you defeat my child? The mother wolf glared at Feng Wu. Meanwhile, the fairy was prompting Feng Wu in her head. Faster! You don't have much time left. Feng Wu knew very well that she couldn't afford to spend more than an hour in the Dragon's Gate. Therefore, when the father wolf grinned and said, if that's the case, it didn't get to finish its sentence. Feng Wu charged at them, punching one wolf and kicking the other. The 2 wolves were immediately struck down. Feng Wu only had to attack once. Without hesitation, Feng Wu headed for the next trial. Meanwhile, the crowd outside were watching her in disbelief. They knew that Feng Wu was good enough to get through the normal level, but they didn't expect her to achieve it so effortlessly. Although it was only the normal level, it was still difficult for new Year 2 students. About 10% of Year 2 students still couldn't pass it. This Feng Wu is more capable than I expected. I think we've underestimated her. Would she take the Dragon's Gate challenge if she didn't know what she was doing? You people are so naive. Chapter 1340, Feng Wu knows. Chapter 1340, Feng Wu knows. But this is only the normal level. Each trial is going to be more difficult than the previous one. I'd like to see how far she can go. I don't think she'll make it beyond the 3rd trial. Feng Wu entered the 3rd trial when one of the students said those words. The 3rd trial was on the 3rd floor, and her mission still involved wolves. However, there were so many of them this time. One look at the pack, and Feng Wu knew that there were at least 20 wolves. Every single one of them was strong and had glossy fur. Outside, many people couldn't wait to laugh at Feng Wu. She can handle 1 or 2 wolves, but there are 20 of them now. She's not going to take them down anytime soon. Who does she think she is? Does she really believe that? They were still talking when Feng Wu ran into the pack of wolves, moving as fast as a gust of wind. The next thing they knew, all 20 wolves had collapsed on the ground. The crowd was speechless. They sucked in their breaths. Feng Wu had simply moved so fast that it shocked them. Chao Ge laughed wholeheartedly. I told you already. Xiao Wu is so much more capable than you think. No one said a word, because they didn't know what to say. Leng Hu of Tiger Head snorted. It's only the normal level. Big deal. Chao Ge grinned. She's at the normal level now. But she'll soon make it to the difficult level. Leng Hu said, I can't wait. Chao Ge nodded. You'll see. How much time do I have? Inside the dragon's gate, Feng Wu wasn't as relaxed as she appeared, since she was racing against time. If she couldn't finish the challenge in the next hour, she would live in eternal damnation. The fairy sounded pleasantly surprised when she quickly said, It only took you 3 minutes to pass the normal level. But the announcement didn't cheer Feng Wu up at all, because she knew very well that each trial would be harder than the previous one, and would take her more time to get through. She arrived at the next floor as the fairy spoke. The first 3 trials belonged to the normal level, and were rated 1 star. Starting from the 4th floor, she had entered the difficult level, and the trials were all rated 2 stars. Although the difficulty level had only been raised by 1 star, Feng Wu sensed an intimidating power as soon as she walked onto the 4th floor. She looked up to discover a giant robot. It was the size of a 3-story tower. Compared with it, Feng Wu was tiny, and her thin limbs looked like matchsticks. Red light shone from the robot's eyes as it stared at Feng Wu, and a voice came out of its belly. Young lady, it's not too late for you to give up now. There was no cadence to its voice, and it paused after each word, which made it sound rather creepy. Seeing the blue glow coming out of the robot and its smooth outline, Feng Wu was alarmed. That was a very powerful robot. Needless to say, it had great physical strength. Feng Wu knew perfectly well what her shortcomings were. Chapter 1341, Repeated Defeats. Chapter 1341, Repeated Defeats. Feng Wu knew perfectly well that she was fast and good at cultivation and formation techniques, but strength wasn't her forte. Right at that moment, the robot clenched its fists and without warning, it struck at Feng Wu. Thump! There was a loud sound. Luckily, Feng Wu dodged in time. She quickly hid behind a pillar, and the robot's fist smashed into it. Crack! The pillar made a loud cracking sound. The robot drew back its fist, and immediately struck at Feng Wu again. Once more, Feng Wu narrowly escaped the attack. The robot moved faster and faster, and with each strike, it exerted more power. Its movements created gusts of wind. Feng Wu raised her speed as well. She was moving so fast that other people couldn't follow her with their eyes. Each time the robot almost hit her, she would somehow brush past its fist. While the others watched in fear, Feng Wu was filled with apprehension as well. She couldn't keep doing this. She had to find a solution, since it would only be a matter of time before she got hit. She didn't have time to keep stalling. Just then there was a loud thump. The fist smashed into Feng Wu. She wasn't so lucky this time and was hit in the nose. Thump! The others watched as Feng Wu flew backward. The next second, she fell to the ground with a bleeding nose. All the onlookers were speechless. Seriously? Feng Wu got hit just like that. Wasn't she so impressive during the normal level? We were all shocked. She's only on the 4th floor now. How can she? I knew it. She's only a new Year 1 student. How capable can she be? Forget the insane level. Even the difficult level is a struggle for her. Not to mention that she's only on the first trial of that level. Feng Wu has bitten off more than she can chew. She's doomed. Almost no one had any faith in Feng Wu. Even Feng Sun was frowning and looked concerned now, to say nothing of those Year 2 students who barely knew her. If the 4th floor was already so tough for her, How was she supposed to handle the trials after this one? Feng Sun clenched his fists nervously. Involuntarily, he looked at Jun Linyuan. As expected, Boss Jun looked concerned as well. Feng Sun had nothing to say. Judging by the power Feng Wu had exerted so far, she probably wouldn't make it beyond the 5th floor. Inside the Dragon's Gate, Feng Wu had no idea how the people outside were evaluating her, since all she could think of now was the robot. The robot didn't stop attacking Feng Wu after she fell down. Instead, it only moved faster. Thump! It punched her hard again. Poor Feng Wu. She was smashed again. The robot was the size of a 3-story building, and its arms were unbelievably strong. Thump! Feng Wu crashed to the ground once more. This time, the ground cracked when she smashed into it. That was how incredible the impact was. OMG! Oh my god! Feng Wu is. I thought she could at least make it to the 5th floor. By the looks of it, she won't even be able to get through the 4th floor. Chapter 1342. Finally figured it out. Chapter 1342. Finally figured it out. Many people were talking and crying out at the same time. Standing in the crowd, Xiao Yi gloated. Doesn't Feng Wu always think so highly of herself? I bet she never saw this coming. She's so ridiculous, thought Xiao Yi. She smirked and said, There I was thinking how incredible she is. I see that she's not that much better than the rest of us. Clenching her fists, Xiaoga glared at Xiao Yi. Xiao Wu can go much further than this. You people are underestimating her. Xiao Yi smirked. In that case, I can't wait to see her performance. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had smashed into the ground again. The impact sent an excruciating pain up her spine. She drew in her breath, worried that the fall might have hurt her spine. The robot didn't stop just because Feng Wu was injured. Instead, a murderous look flickered in its eyes, and it charged at Feng Wu. It wanted to finish this battle as soon as possible. No! Despite the pain in her back, Feng Wu jumped to her feet and rushed out. The Phoenix dance was such a skillful move that the robot wasn't able to keep up with her for the moment. However, the space was limited here, and no matter how fast Feng Wu could run, the robot would still be able to catch up with her. Once she figured that out, she looked over her shoulder to observe the robot. As expected, it was smirking, and its eyes were filled with confidence. So it was running after her like a cat teasing a rat. Damn it! Feng Wu clenched her fists. You've spent 7 minutes here already. Just then, the fairy spoke in Feng Wu's head. No! Feng Wu's stomach lurched. She had only reached the 4th floor, but it had already cost her 10 precious minutes. At this rate, she was going to fail. No, she had to figure something out. As Feng Wu ran, she recalled the robot's movements in her head, as if she was replaying a movie. She studied each frame. Where was the problem? Outside, many people saw what Feng Wu was doing and snorted. Is she seriously thinking about how to defeat a robot? Does she think that there's some sort of technique? That's just ridiculous. She's so going to lose. She's such a braggart. What's she doing now? Ha ha ha. Many Year 2 students smirked. And most of them were girls. They hadn't been so hostile toward Feng Wu before. But ever since the Crown Prince got here, Feng Wu had become an eyesore. One of the Year 2 students, however, was looking at Feng Wu with unblinking eyes. And that person was Xu Yunrua, whom Feng Wu had only met once before. However, everyone was either looking at Feng Wu or Jun Linyuan, so no one noticed the look on Xu Yunrua's face. Inside the Dragon's Gate, Feng Wu's eyes grew brighter as she studied the robot. She finally found the problem. Its paces and strikes were too accurate. The length of each of its steps was exactly the same, as if someone had measured it with a ruler. And each strike it made was the optimal outcome of complicated calculations. It was a machine. Chapter 1343, Turn Things Around. Chapter 1343, Turn Things Around. Once Feng Wu figured that out, she smiled a little. Since the robot was designed to make the optimal choice, doing the exact opposite would definitely disrupt its rhythm. Once that happened, Feng Wu's eyes became brighter and brighter. She finally figured out a way to handle the robot. After she had the right idea, all she needed to do now was find the best way to tackle the robot through trial and error. By then, the robot was already very close to her. If she wasn't careful enough, it could grab her with its hand. To everyone's astonishment, Feng Wu suddenly stopped moving forward. Instead, she began to back away with strange movements. Even the robot itself was baffled, let alone the onlookers. It only took a second for Feng Wu to run around it. The robot bellowed and spun around to chase her. However, with the robot's enormous size, it wasn't very easy for it to turn around. Feng Wu was as nimble as a little mouse. She kept running around the robot, making it disoriented. Outside, everyone was dumbfounded. Xiaoge was very pleased, and she smirked at Xiao Yi. Did you just say that Xiao was going to fail? Look at how she's playing the robot now. Xiao Yi snorted. Are you sure she's going to win? Xiaoge raised her chin. Of course. Anyone with eyes can see that once Xiao Wu gets the chance to climb up that robot, she can cut its throat in no time. Xiao Yi grunted, but she had to admit that Xiaoge was right. Everyone else agreed with Xiaoge as well. But, to everyone's surprise, Feng Wu didn't do it. She had indeed climbed onto the robot, but she only jumped from one spot to another like a nimble monkey. She didn't climb onto its shoulder to cut its throat. What's she doing? Asked someone in confusion. Who knows? She's hopping around like she's having fun. Why is she still in the mood to play? Does she not know what her priority is? This Feng Wu is so vain. How can she be so careless? Is she showing off now? After Feng Wu turned things around, many had changed their attitude toward her. However, their opinion of her changed again almost immediately. Crossing her arms, Xiao Yi gave Xiaoge a contemptuous look and clicked her tongue. Gosh, I didn't know she was the complacent type. She's going to get herself killed. Xiaoge clenched her fists in frustration. She snorted. Xiao Wu knows what she's doing. Just shut up and don't say things you don't understand. Xiao Yi chuckled. You're chopping logic. Inside the dragon's gate. Xiaoge was right. Feng Wu indeed had her own reasons. Inspired by the trials for the normal level, she guessed that she would encounter robots on the next 2 floors, but they would be larger in number and more powerful. Chapter 1344 Untitled. Chapter 1344, Untitled. If that was the case, why not figure out the robot's structure while she was still on the 4th floor? That was why Feng Wu had let go of the victory within her reach, and climbed onto the robot to explore its structure instead. If this was half a month ago, when Feng Wu knew nothing about forging, she wouldn't have been able to figure out how the robot was put together. However, it was only the other day that she and Master Rong Yang had built her Fallen Star Sword together. During the forging of the Fallen Star Sword, she had been in charge of controlling the fire, while Master Rong Yang talked to her about the principles of smith forging. Thus, Feng Wu was able to find the robot's Achilles heel shortly after she started exploring. Meanwhile, the robot seemed to have detected Feng Wu's purpose. It bellowed and shook its body violently. The movement shook Feng Wu off its body, like an autumn tree shedding its leaves. Die! The robot raised a foot to stomp on Feng Wu. She wouldn't survive if that foot landed on her. But Feng Wu rolled and dodged in time. However, the robot still chased after her, and she barely escaped it several times. In fact, Feng Wu could have ended this fight a long time ago, but she had her own plan. She needed to figure out the pattern of its movements. However, a red light started flashing at that moment, and a warning sounded. Oh, Feng Wu really is going to fail. Many of the Year 2 students gloated. What's that noise? Xiaoge was confused. Xiao Yi explained to her. That's the warning for the 60-second countdown. If Feng Wu can't make it to the next floor within the next 60 seconds, she'll be considered to have failed the challenge. That was to say, there was a time limit for each trial. Xiaoge clenched her fists. Xiao Wu, come on. On the 4th floor inside the dragon's gate. Feng Wu didn't know exactly what that warning sound meant, but she could more or less guess. Thump. The robot tried to stomp on her again, Feng Wu evaded it at the last second. By then, she had learned the pattern to all the robot's movements. Click. She looked up in passing after she dodged the attack, and saw that the door to the 5th floor was slowly closing. She finally knew what that warning sound meant. Without hesitation, Feng Wu pushed off of the robot with her feet, and dashed toward the door at her fastest speed. No, she won't make it. She can't beat that closing door. There goes the end of this Dragon's Gate challenge. Guys, it's time to go to bed. Many students yawned, and were ready to go back to bed when, whoosh, there was a flash of white light. When they looked again, they saw that Feng Wu was on the 5th floor. 3 bigger and stronger robots surrounded her like 3 small mountains. Gosh, Feng Wu made it. She was able to make it to the 5th floor at the last moment. That's incredible. Don't celebrate just yet. Haven't you noticed? There are more robots on this floor, and they're even stronger. Chapter 1345 Untitled. Chapter 1345 Untitled. That's right. She was already struggling on the 4th floor. Can she manage this time? Because of Feng Wu's performance on the previous floor, no one had any hope in her now. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was slowly getting to her feet. She then looked up at the 3 giant robots, who were all sneering at her. Compared with them, Feng Wu was even tinier than an ant. Little girl, it's not too late to surrender. Otherwise, we'll stomp you to a pulp. The smallest of the 3 spoke in a complacent voice. Feng Wu was busy coming up with a plan. She had learned everything about the robot structure on the 4th floor, but she had only learned about half of its stances. Therefore, Feng Wu smiled at them. Why are you so sure that I'm going to lose? Come and get me. After that, Feng Wu started running around the robots in circles again. There she goes. She's doing it again. Does she think she can run away from the robots just like that? How naive. She's so dead. Outside, the students still didn't think she would succeed, and many of them made contemptuous remarks. But back inside the Dragon's Gate, Feng Wu looked so tiny compared with the 3 giants. Before they realized what was going on, Feng Wu started running around them so fast that it made their heads spin. All of a sudden, Feng Wu dashed forward like a gust of wind. Everyone was convinced that Feng Wu was doomed. With 3 robots at her heels, even if she could survive, she would still be badly injured. To everyone's surprise, only one of the 3 robots chased Feng Wu, while the other 2 simply remained where they were. What was going on here? Everyone was shocked. They then turned to look at Feng Wu. Right now, the weakest robot of the 3 was running after Feng Wu with heavy footsteps. Feng Wu stumbled forward as the robot threw punches at her. Despite her struggle, she still made time to look over her shoulder to study the robot's movements. Several times, the robot almost caught her. Luckily, Feng Wu was nimble enough to dodge its strikes every single time. Feng Wu is so going to lose. That was what all the students were thinking. However, things started changing a moment later. Because Feng Wu stopped running. She stopped and turned around with a faint smile on her face. The robot was confused. It couldn't understand why this human girl had a meaningful yet malicious smirk on her face. All of a sudden, Feng Wu pushed off of the floor with her toes, and the next second she charged out. Right before the robot struck down again, Feng Wu followed its momentum and blocked its way. She was able to move first every single time, before the robot could take action. That was to say, Feng Wu had figured out the robot's pattern of movements. As everyone watched, crack! Feng Wu snapped off one of the robot's hands. Immediately after that, there was another crack. Chapter 1346 Untitled. Chapter 1346 Untitled. Feng Wu removed one of the robot's arms. The students outside went insane. What's going on? Why does Feng Wu seem enlightened all of a sudden? What's happening here? I don't understand. Many people stared at Feng Wu in astonishment when they realized what was going on. To their further surprise, after taking off the robot's arms, Feng Wu shifted her body, and the next second, she was behind the robot. Thump. No one knew where Feng Wu had struck the giant robot, but it shrieked. The next second, its enormous body convulsed violently. Right after that, crack, things started falling from its body. The sound of spare parts hitting the floor continued. At first, they fell one by one, but by the end, they were falling like metallic raindrops. Rumble. The robot disintegrated like a landslide. It turned into a pile of spare parts on the floor. Everyone outside watched with their mouths agape. They couldn't believe their eyes. That's impossible. No way. How is that possible? That was so unexpected. Xiaoyi stared at Feng Wu in disbelief, and her hands clenched into fists in her sleeves. No, that's impossible. In fact, many other people also hoped that it wasn't real. But they couldn't deny the reality. As soon as Feng Wu took care of the robot, she walked away from it. The other two robots were still standing there. They looked as though they were frozen to the spot. At first, many students tried to persuade themselves that the robots had malfunctioned. However, Feng Wu unhurriedly walked up to them and casually patted both of them. Thump! The giant robots collapsed into two piles of spare parts. Both of them. That immediately shocked the students all over again. How is that even possible? It took Feng Wu so much time to defeat one robot on the fourth floor. So how did she manage to? Xiaoyi stared at Feng Wu with wide-open eyes. She had thought that the fifth floor would be as far as Feng Wu could go. As it turned out, she had passed the trial with much less effort this time. Is this Feng Wu even human? How could she pass the fifth trial more easily than the fourth one? It was barely any effort at all. I can't wait to see what she's going to do on the sixth floor. By then the onlookers were split into several groups. Some found Feng Wu exceptionally bright, and some couldn't wait to see her fail. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was running toward the sixth floor at top speed. Like everyone had expected, a group of robots was waiting for her there. They were enormous in size and there were so many of them. Just by standing there, they already looked very intimidating. When Feng Wu walked onto the sixth floor, they all stared at her with ferocious looks on their faces. The students outside felt their stomachs lurch when they saw the room full of robots. Chapter 1347 Untitled. Chapter 1347, Untitled. Even Feng Sun was frowning now. There are so many of them. Even I would need a little bit of work to go through them. Because of those words, many people doubted whether Feng Wu could pass this trial. There were 20 gigantic robots in total, each as tall and strong as the next. They didn't even have to raise an arm. They could easily squash Feng Wu to a pulp with one big thumb. To them, Feng Wu was no more than a flea. To their surprise, instead of running away, Feng Wu jumped onto one of the robots at an unbelievable speed. She had to. There were too many robots here. If she stayed on the ground, she would either be caught or stepped on. Feng Wu was smarter than that. Knowing how dangerous it was to stay on the ground, she ran toward the robots and jumped onto one of them the first chance she got. The color of her clothes was very similar to that of the robots, and they couldn't find her once she was on the back of one of them. To make it worse for them, Feng Wu had found out everything about them from the previous two trials. She was able to take them apart without any difficulty. Thump, thump, thump. One of the robots fell to pieces. Thump, thump, thump. Another one fell apart as well. The students outside watched with open mouths and didn't know what to say. This Feng Wu is so scary. Is she even human? How does she know this sort of thing? Feng Wu didn't know that she was being watched by thousands of people, but even if she did, she probably wouldn't care. She was moving so fast that watching her made the others dizzy. Thud, thud, thud. With her swift movements, 10 robots soon turned into spare parts. Moreover, as they fell apart, the spare parts covered the floor. The rest of the robots chased after Feng Wu. But the spare parts were now piled up to their calves, hindering their movements. They weren't able to run after Feng Wu. On the other hand, Feng Wu had figured out the robot's structure and their stances. She could attack them, or dodge their attacks as she wished. There were 9 robots left. 8. 7. In a matter of seconds, Feng Wu had taken apart 5 more robots. OMG! She's incredible. Where did she learn all that? The students opened their eyes wide in excitement and clenched their fists. Many Year 2 students had changed their opinion of Feng Wu. Even the members of Tiger Head couldn't help but secretly admire her. She's insane. Lung Hu snorted. Tao Hu clenched his fists with bloodshot eyes. This opponent was even more terrifying than he had expected. That girl is amazing. Feng Sun wasn't stingy with his compliments. She's making very rapid progress. He looked to Xianyi as he spoke. Xianyi nodded. One could say that they were the ones who had been with Feng Wu every step of the way, as she worked to improve herself, but the speed of her achievements was beyond their imagination. Chapter 1348, Feng Wu's Current Ranking. Chapter 1348, Feng Wu's Current Ranking. Actually, cultivation level-wise, at least a small proportion of Year 2 students are more advanced than Feng Wu. Xianyi paused for a while after those words, before he went on. But they may not be able to pass the 6th floor. Feng Sun nodded. I see that now. Little Feng Wu could have defeated the robot much sooner on the 4th floor. But she prolonged the fight to study its structure. Xianyi nodded. Because the robot on the 4th floor is the smallest and the weakest one. Feng Sun said. That was why she seized the opportunity to explore the robot and figure out its pattern of movements. Xianyi said. Indeed. And she was still doing it on the 5th floor. Feng Sun said. Without the experience from the previous 2 floors, she would never have been able to succeed on the 6th floor, because it's several times more difficult than the previous floors put together. Xianyi said. It's so rare to find a person with her mentality. She's simply so calm. Much calmer than anyone I've ever met. Feng Sun said. And she's smart too. She's able to think 5 or 6 steps ahead of her. Xianyi said. She's so scary. Feng Sun looked pleased. That scary girl is my sister. Xianyi wanted to retort, but all words failed him. Feng Sun and Xianyi didn't exactly try to lower their voices, so the others heard their every word. They were already amazed by Feng Wu's performance, and when they heard the conversation, many people immediately changed their opinion of Feng Wu. Some of the Year 2 students had no choice but to admit that this new student was indeed better than them. Hey, what do you think Feng Wu's ranking is? Someone asked. Many people fell silent when they heard the question. Feng Wu wasn't a Year 2 student yet, and her name wasn't on the Year 2 billboard. That was why many people didn't know what her real level was. Around 900th, I think. I think she should be higher. Lu Yuntao is 900th now, but can he pass the 6th floor? Lu Yuntao was in the crowd as well. Immediately, all eyes were on him. The usually ignored teenager. I. The stalwart teenager had always had a problem with his stutter, and he could barely form a sentence with everyone looking at him. I can't. The others agreed. That was to say, Feng Wu was at least as good as the 900th student of Year 2. So, what do you think her ranking is? Everyone was curious. Just then, Feng Wu finally took apart the last robot and finished the 6th trial. She then moved toward the 7th floor. The members of Tiger Head exchanged awkward looks. They all looked at Lung Hu, because she was the weakest member in the group. Lung Hu said, I'm 950th. I can't pass the 6th floor. Gu Honglang said, I'm 850th, and I can't either. Another member scratched his head and said, I'm 750th, and I passed the 5th floor last time. I might be able to manage the 6th floor. Chapter 1349, She Won't Make It. Chapter 1349, She Won't Make It. But what this teenager called Su Hong failed to mention was that he wouldn't be able to take apart a bunch of robots the way Feng Wu had, even after he watched her do it. Does that mean that Feng Wu should be around 750th, if she's included on our billboard? Tao Hu, who had remained silent the whole time, clenched his fists and said, She can't be higher than 700th. Lung Hu darted a suspicious look at their group leader, and wondered if Feng Wu would really only be ranked in the 700s. The elite level starts from the 7th floor. Tao Hu snorted. I'd like to see her try to get through this one. Immediately, many people grew excited. Even if Feng Wu was only 700th, that was still an amazing achievement, because that was already much better than many existing Year 2 students, and Feng Wu hadn't even gotten into Year 2 yet. For the Year 2 students, it was very difficult to move up the billboard. Therefore, under normal circumstances, Feng Wu wouldn't be able to go further than the 6th floor. The elite level starts from the 7th floor, and it's no longer all about fighting. One has to think about their moves, and that's not something Feng Wu can manage. Have we ever had a student in initial who skipped a grade and made it all the way to the 7th floor? No, we haven't, and Feng Wu won't be that person either. If I remember correctly, there's a magma beast on the 7th floor, isn't there? Feng Sun murmured as he rubbed his chin. Yes, indeed. Various emotions flashed in Chief Qiao's eyes as he studied Feng Wu, and he was lost in thought. He had believed what Qiao Yi told him at first, that Feng Wu only got into Imperial College because of her pretty face, and that she had become the top student of Year 1 because of her glib tongue. But as it turned out, Feng Wu wasn't just a pretty face. She was an incredible cultivator. Chief Qiao, are you suggesting that this magma beast is different from what we had before? Feng Sun's eyes flickered. Chief Qiao nodded at Feng Sun with a smile. The students have been getting better, so it's the same with the beast. It's much more powerful than when you were here. Feng Sun raised an eyebrow. So, are you saying that Xiao Wu won't be able to pass the elite level? Instantly all eyes were on Chief Qiao. Almost all the Year 2 students had placed a bet, and most of them had bet on Feng Wu's defeat. Of the latter, most had bet that Feng Wu wouldn't pass the elite level. Right now, Feng Wu was right at the entrance to the elite level. She's not going to pass. Chief Qiao shook his head and sounded very sure. The magma beast was only a baby when you fought it, but it's a teenager now. Rubbing his chin, Feng Sun pondered. Are you sure she won't make it? Why do I feel that the elite level won't be a problem for her? Chief Qiao smiled wryly. He didn't want to argue with Feng Sun, but it didn't mean that he agreed with him. I see that Chief Qiao doesn't believe me. Feng Sun smiled. Chief Qiao shook his head. My lord, you may not know this, but less than 200 students of initial have actually passed the elite level. Everyone drew in their breaths. Chapter 1350 Magma Beast. Chapter 1350 Magma Beast. If only 200 students of initial had passed the elite level, that meant. If Feng Wu passed the elite level, she would be one of the top 200 students of Year 2. She hadn't even been admitted into Year 2 yet, but she could now become one of the top 200? Dream on. The ability Feng Wu has shown so far only puts her in the 700s. How can she belong to the top 200? That's right. I admit that she's a very talented student, but even a genius needs time to grow. There's no way she'll defeat the magma beast. She's not going to pass the 7th floor. Excuse me, can I raise my stake? That's right. Count me in. Can I raise my stake as well? A moment ago, when Feng Wu passed the 6th floor, many people were surprised and amazed, but all of a sudden, they lost faith in her all over again. Feng Sun sneered at these idiotic people. What they didn't know was that Feng Wu hadn't even used her fallen star sword yet. Do you all want to raise your stakes? Great. Feng Sun glanced at Chaoga. Give them what they want. Chaoga had always been a dauntless girl. With Feng Sun's consent, she let the other people raise their stakes. In a matter of minutes, the total number of points increased significantly again. On the 7th floor inside the Dragon's Gate, Feng Wu had no idea how many points she was responsible for. Right now, she was staring at the magma beast with a serious look on her face. The magma beast was the size of a volcano and was covered in flames. Even the tips of its fur were burning, which gave it a ferocious look. Thump! The beast raised one foot, revealing a giant paw print on the ground. It was about the size of a bed, and more than big enough for Feng Wu to fit inside. Everywhere the beast stepped, flames shot up like erupting magma. It was a very scary scene. What a terrifying beast. How was Feng Wu supposed to fight that thing? Just then, the giant magma charged at Feng Wu at a tremendous speed. But Feng Wu only remained where she was and stood her ground. What was she doing? Run! Xiao Wu, run! Xiaoga urged as she stared at Feng Wu and clenched her fists. Scarlet flames came out of the beast's nostrils, mouth, and enormous ears. The ground shook as it ran, sending sparks flying everywhere. How terrifying! 100 meters. 50 meters. 10 meters. Just as the beast raised a paw to smack down on Feng Wu, whoosh! Feng Wu disappeared from sight. The momentum made the beast stumble forward, and at that moment, Feng Wu reappeared behind its back. Thump! Feng Wu gave it a kick. She put all her strength in her leg, and the impact was incredible. Thump! Everyone watched in disbelief, because they saw the enormous beast stumble forward from Feng Wu's kick. Thump! Its forehead hit the ground, and it rolled forward. Everyone sucked in their breaths. That was so. All in all, the beast had underestimated Feng Wu, which made her first strike possible. It wasn't a good start for the beast at all. Chapter 1351 Ice and Earth? Chapter 1351 Ice and Earth. The scary fact was that at this advanced level, a slight mistake could ultimately lead to failure. The magma beast lost its momentum from the very beginning, which gave Feng Wu a great opportunity. As a result, Feng Wu smiled a little. She charged at the magma beast before it could stand back up. In fact, Feng Wu could have drawn out the fallen star sword. Nothing would be able to compete with the fallen star sword. However, that wasn't what Feng Wu did. Because the magma beast wasn't important enough for her to draw out her sword. Thump! Feng Wu jumped onto the giant. Standing amidst the flames, Feng Wu waved her hand and whoosh! It started snowing heavily. Ice and snow. Someone outside the dragon's gate cried out. Does Feng Wu have the ice attribute? Since when? Many people looked confused. As far as they could remember, Feng Wu had always had the fire attribute. When did she obtain a second attribute? And that stance she's using is very advanced. Feng Wu is so capable. I have the ice attribute as well, and I'm a spiritual elder. Why couldn't my ice extinguish the beast's fire? But Feng Wu's ice could. Ice and snow drifted down onto the magma beast. Instantly, the flames all over its body gradually went out as the snow fell. The fire is put out. The magma fire. Didn't Chief Qiao say that the beast is already a teenager? Instantly, all eyes were on Feng Wu. The teenage girl seemed to shine as resplendently as the sun. Over and over again, she did amazing things to change other people's opinion of her. That was incredible. How could a teenage girl be so impressive? Everyone was still admiring Feng Wu for what she had done when suddenly, the magma beast lying stiffly on the ground convulsed. The next second, it looked up and glared at Feng Wu. Plop plop. Snow started falling off its body. Its eyes were scarlet red. And flames rose from its body again. Xiao Yi was thrilled. She cried out. The beast is back on its feet. The beast is back on its feet. Immediately a lot of people looked at her. Someone murmured. Isn't Miss Xiao Yi the daughter of Chief Qiao, and a year 1 teacher? So she's Feng Wu's teacher, isn't she? Why is she so eager to see Feng Wu fail? I saw the bet she put in. It's a lot higher than ours. She's so. However, Xiao Yi didn't hear any of that. Right now, all her attention was on Feng Wu. Feng Wu saw the beast wake up and new flames sprout. So what? She had extinguished the fire on the magma beast before, so of course she could do it again. Come ice and snow. With a wave of her hand, ice and snow started falling again. They immediately put out the new flames, rising from the magma beast. Everyone watched with their mouths agape. Seeing that things had turned against it, the beast turned to flee. Feng Wu smiled and lightly touched the ground with a fingertip. Whoosh! Chapter 1352 Purple Vines. Chapter 1352 Purple Vines. Everywhere Feng Wu touched, spikes shot out of the ground. Gosh! How did Feng Wu learn icy spikes? Isn't that an advanced skill only for Year 2 students? How can she do it? No, you're missing the point here. One has to have both ice and earth attributes to pull it off. Does Fengwu have the earth attribute? So she has fire, ice, and earth attributes now? That's just... Many people were astonished. Once more, they were amazed by Fengwu's performance. And they weren't alone. Even Feng Sun was shocked by what Fengwu was doing. Since when did little Fengwu obtain the earth attribute? Feng Sun turned to Xianyi and asked, Xian II, did you know about this? Xianyi shook his head. He had no idea either. Feng Sun rubbed his chin. What else is the girl keeping from us? Can't she keep a lower profile? The very conspicuous Fengwu had reached the 8th floor. It was also the 8th trial. Fengwu narrowed her eyes when she entered the floor. Because she couldn't see anyone anywhere. Looking around, she saw that the ground was covered with purple vines, which had little white flowers scattered among them. But where was everyone? Looking around, Fengwu couldn't see anyone. That only made her more wary. All of a sudden, she detected that a thin vine had suddenly wrapped itself around her ankle. Watch out! Many people outside cried out. However, both of Fengwu's feet were already caught by the vine. The purple vine had been moving tentatively at first, but after it caught Fengwu, it grew bolder and started moving faster. The vine was only as thin as a finger at first, but gradually became as thick as a baby's arm. In a matter of seconds, it was wrapped tightly around Fengwu. OMG! Shit! Fengwu is tied up. Is she going to fail? Many people were worried about her. Meanwhile, Fengwu still remained unperturbed. If one had to point out what had changed, the only difference was that the look in her eyes had become more fierce and profound. Squeak! The purple vine began to wrap tightly around Fengwu's body. Fengwu was a slim girl to begin with, and the vine around her body only made her look slimmer. Outside, many people had confidence in Fengwu at first, but now, when they saw how the purple vine was wrapped around her, they held their breaths anxiously. But there were those who let out breaths of relief. Please strangle Fengwu. Let her fail, please. Don't let her pass the 8th floor. That way we'll all win. Many people had bet heavily on Fengwu's failure, so if Fengwu made it through the elite level, they would lose so many points. Crack! The creepy sound went on. Fengwu's body twisted under the pressure. Fengwu is going to be killed. That was the thought in many people's heads. Even Feng Sun had gotten to his feet nervously as he stared at Fengwu. He had broken into a cold sweat, and was so afraid that something would happen to Fengwu. Chapter 1353, The Amazing Fengwu 1. Chapter 1353, The Amazing Fengwu 1. Feng Sun recalled that Fengwu still hadn't used her Fallen Star Sword yet. Use it now. Use your Fallen Star Sword. Does she want to be killed? Seeing the vine wrap even tighter around Fengwu, Feng Sun clenched his fists. And what was Fengwu doing right now? It was true. When the purple vine had wrapped around her at first, Fengwu really felt unable to move at all. Crack! The purple vine kept tightening around her. Fengwu could feel the pain. Should she use the Fallen Star Sword, her ultimate weapon? An idea suddenly struck her. She recalled a little trick, which her beautiful master taught her when she was little. In plain terms, it allowed her to shrink to a smaller size. Being a smart girl, Fengwu mastered the skill almost immediately. According to the beautiful master, this skill was only a petty trick to help her relax. Now that she was tied up by the vine, however, Fengwu realized that this petty trick could do so much more than help her relax. In a critical moment like this, it could save her life. When everyone thought she was still tied up by the vine, she had already slipped out of the cocoon from the other side. But because of the angle, almost no one outside saw what she did. Almost. What's she doing? Is she willing to die for this stupid challenge? Feng Sun was exasperated. Because the purple vine was killing her. What was more, it was especially tight around her waist. Fengwu is doomed. She's trapped inside, and the purple vine has gained the upper hand. She has no way out now. Look, that vine is so tight around Fengwu's waist. That waistline can't be bigger than 60 centimeters. I know. How many people can have such a tiny waist? Feng Wu is going to be cut in half. Look, it's still growing tighter. 58, 57, 56, 55. Oh God. Feng Sun was on edge as well. Has little Feng Wu lost her mind? Why won't she use her fallen star sword? She obviously has it. No one answered him. Exasperated, Feng Sun grabbed Jun Linyuan. Boss Jun, do something. Aren't you worried? The crown prince gave Feng Sun a bewildered look. Worried? About what? Little Feng Wu is going to be snapped in half. Aren't you concerned? Feng Sun was almost in tears. Jun Linyuan only glanced at him indifferently and asked, "What's there to be concerned about?" Feng Sun. He almost exploded when he heard those words from Jun Linyuan. The surrounding girls, on the other hand, were thrilled. They didn't say anything, but it was all in their eyes. Did you hear that? Did you? His Royal Highness couldn't care less about Feng Wu dying. I don't think he'll be affected by Feng Wu's death at all. Who said that His Royal Highness cares about Feng Wu? That's just preposterous. Chapter 1354. The Amazing Feng Wu 2. Chapter 1354. The Amazing Feng Wu 2. Seeing that Feng Wu was going to die, and that the crown prince didn't care about her, all the girls were over the moon. But soon. 45 centimeters? 40 centimeters? 35 centimeters? Wait, no one's waist can be as small as 35 centimeters. It's 30 now. 25 centimeters. Oh God. 10 centimeters. Crack. The cocoon snapped in half. Outside. Ah. Is Feng Wu dead? Is she really dead? What a shame. Why did she have to be so stubborn? That's why you shouldn't bite off more than you can chew. Otherwise, you'll end up like Feng Wu. Many people sighed, but they gloated over Feng Wu's predicament at the same time. Xiaoyi had never felt so happy before. She was ecstatic. Feng Wu is dead, just like that. How wonderful. However, before her smile could grow wider, things took a turn. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The purple vine started retreating, as if its soul was being sucked out. The vine was almost 1,000 meters long, and seemed to have a mind of its own. As the vine retreated, it gradually exposed the ground beneath it, and translucent bones were scattered all over the place. Are those the bones of magical beasts devoured by the vine? Gosh, this purple vine feeds on flesh and blood. Hey, where is the vine going? Why did it disappear so suddenly? Everyone was still feeling baffled when they saw what had really happened. When the mist dissipated, they could see the core of the vine, and they were shocked. The core of the purple vine did exist. Moreover, the core had shrunk into a ball, and someone was holding it. The fact that the core had shrunk wasn't scary, but the person was. OMG. Oh my God. No. No way. That's impossible. Isn't Feng Wu dead? Didn't the vine cut her in half? Why is she still alive? Not only is she alive, from the looks of it, she has also taken control of the vine's core. If she controls the core, she controls this massive purple vine. But why is she still alive? How did she survive? And she didn't even seem injured. Outside, the Year 2 students were almost driven mad by all the surprises Feng Wu gave them. Why did their school have such a student? How did she do it? Is she even human? Does she have supernatural powers? Feng Sun was the happiest of them all. Ha ha ha. I knew it. I knew little Feng Wu was going to be all right. She's incredible. The crown prince glanced at him. Recalling how anxious he had been earlier, Feng Sun blushed. Boss Jun, you knew all along that Feng Wu had already escaped, didn't you? Feng Sun asked Jun Linyuan. He wasn't expecting an answer, but the crown prince said, "Yep." Feng Sun looked like he had seen a ghost. Boss Jun just admitted it. Chapter 1355. The Amazing Feng Wu 3. Chapter 1355. The Amazing Feng Wu 3. Of these people, Xiaoyi was the most devastated of them all. Right now, she had clenched her fists and was shaking from head to toe. Her eyes practically spat fire. How can this be? Isn't she supposed to be dead? Why is she still alive? Why? Xiaoyi gritted her teeth and bit her lower lip so hard that it bled. Feng Wu had no idea of the complicated feelings which the others had about her. Right now, she was squinting at the purple vine in her hand. In fact, she had known from the very beginning that she had to solve the problem at its root. The purple vine had covered the entire place, but Feng Wu had been convinced that it had to have a core somewhere. If she could take control of the core, the vine would no longer be a threat. Thus, as soon as she slipped out of the vine, Feng Wu had immediately headed for the core. Other people might not know where the core was, but Feng Wu did. Because she knew formations. The vine had been arranged in a formation, and Feng Wu was able to calculate where the core was. Most people only learn formation skills by the book, but Feng Wu was able to apply the logic of formations to other problems. That was why Feng Wu was able to take control of the core and defeat the vine so easily. Then, Feng Wu stared at the core. The look on her face had never been so serious. Under her gaze, the core began to shrink. At first, it was the size of a football, but it grew smaller and smaller, until it was only the size of an egg. Feng Wu stuffed it into her sleeve, and happily moved on to the next floor. Outside, many people were astonished again. Wait a minute, what was that? Feng Wu took the core. That purple vine is the trial itself, and a very rare spirit plant, but she just took it with her. Instantly, everyone turned to Chief Qiao in bewilderment. Can we take away whatever has been placed inside the dragon's gate? Chief Qiao was as dumbfounded as they were. He said, of course not. But didn't Feng Wu do exactly that? Chief Qiao was speechless. He had taught here for many years, but this was the first time he had seen someone remove an examiner from its floor. Wait, that's hardly the point here. The more important thing is that Feng Wu is already on the 9th floor. That's the last trial at the elite level. If she passes this one, a lot of people here are going to lose. Instantly, they all fell silent. That was right. In order to make Feng Wu lose more points, they had bet heavily. A lot of people had staked all their points. Who could have known? I never thought Feng Wu would get this far. And she just keeps giving us pleasant surprises. That's not pleasant at all. It's frightening. So Feng Wu isn't going to pass the 9th floor, is she? Many people pressed their palms together and prayed in silence, hoping that Feng Wu would fail this trial. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was on the 9th floor and had narrowed her eyes. How much time do I have? She asked the fairy the question in her head. Chapter 1356, The Amazing Feng Wu 4. Chapter 1356, The Amazing Feng Wu 4. The fairy was impressed by Feng Wu's quick progress as well, and she sounded very excited. Don't worry, you were very efficient, and we still have 30 minutes left. Feng Wu smiled wryly. How could she not worry? The first few floors were so easy, but it had taken her half an hour to pass them. She still had quite a few floors left. Time was of the essence here. She was on the 9th floor now. What's this trial about? Many people watched curiously, but they couldn't figure it out. Listen, do you hear that? Someone cried out. Instantly, everyone stopped talking, and silence fell over the square. Cuckoo, cuckoo. What's that? Is that a bird? Why birds? Can they stop Feng Wu? Wait, I know what it is. I read about it in Strange Creatures of the East. Those are laughing cuckoos. What's a laughing cuckoo? They twitch when they laugh, and they start spitting black liquid out of their beaks. As soon as that liquid touches a person, that person will turn black, become weak, and can't activate their spiritual essence at all. All it takes is one drop of that liquid. However, that liquid contains a rich amount of spiritual essence. Once the toxin is removed, it'll be edible, and will help one's cultivation greatly. Therefore, this trial is dangerous, but it's a great opportunity as well. Instantly, all eyes were on Feng Wu. There were so many laughing cuckoos, and they were all flapping their wings. The inky liquid they spat out rained down. So what could Feng Wu do to keep the liquid from touching her? All it would take was just one drop to paralyze her. All eyes were on Feng Wu. Even the powerful crown prince didn't look away from her. What a girl. No one noticed the little smile on his face. Nor did they see his flickering eyes. Feng Wu had no idea that so many eyes were on her. Right now, she had narrowed her eyes and was staring at the laughing cuckoos. The laughing part of their name was very accurate, for right now, they were all cracking up like crazy people. As they laughed, the toxic inky liquid dripped down from their beaks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Feng Wu counted in her head. There were 999 of them in total. That was incredible. This was the hardest trial Feng Wu had run into since entering the Dragon's Gate. Some of the previous trials might have been difficult, but she knew how to solve them. But now, she was at a loss. Could she wrap herself up to cover all her skin? Any other day, Feng Wu would have that option, because she had her ring space. But she was inside the Dragon's Gate now, and she knew Chief Qiao would be able to see her. So, she decided to play it safe. If she couldn't do anything about herself, she would have to do something about the birds. It's been 3 minutes. The fairy prompted when she saw that Feng Wu wasn't taking any action. Feng Wu bit her lower lip. She still didn't know what to do. Chapter 1357, The Amazing Feng Wu 5. Chapter 1357, The Amazing Feng Wu 5. The fairy sighed and said in a sorry voice, I wish I could help you. But even if I can come out, I'm still too tiny. I can only stop a few birds at most. Outside, everyone was nervously watching Feng Wu. Most of them had bet on Feng Wu failing at the elite level, so they were all praying inwardly. Lu Yuntao, did you bet on Feng Wu not being able to pass the elite level as well? Leng Hu glanced at Lu Yuntao. Lu Yuntao said, yes. Leng Hu asked, how many points did you use? Lu Yuntao showed her 2 fingers. 200, asked Leng Hu. Lu Yuntao shook his head. 2,000. He shook his head again. 20,000. Lu Yuntao looked like he was going to cry. Yes. Leng Hu said, have you lost your mind? Do you even have that many points? Wait. Lu Yuntao gave Leng Hu a pleading look and didn't know what to say. Don't tell me that you put all of Tiger Head's points in. Leng Hu wanted to smack Lu Yuntao in the head. Lu Yuntao said timidly, you said Feng Wu wasn't that capable at all. So I thought, why waste such a great opportunity? It's not like this is going to happen every day. So Leng Hu wanted to slap him. Gu Hongling stopped Leng Hu. Don't hit him. Anyway, we don't know the final result yet. Leng Hu rolled her eyes at him. Have you seen what Feng Wu has done so far? Of course she's going to pass the 9th floor. I'm sure of it. If that's the case, why is she still standing there? Gu Hongling smirked. Leng Hu turned to look at Feng Wu. He was right. Feng Wu really was still standing there with a big frown on her face. That immediately cheered Lu Yuntao and Leng Hu up. Their eyes practically sparkled. However, that good mood didn't last very long. Whoosh! Feng Wu raised her hand, and something flew into the air. What the hell? Everyone stared at it in bewilderment. Soon, they found out what Feng Wu had been doing while she had been standing there. OMG. Is that even doable? Feng Wu is so. How can someone be so smart? How? So what was it that had surprised everyone? The thing Feng Wu threw into the air was none other than the core of the vine, which she had brought with her from the 8th floor. Feng Wu's original plan was to take the core back home and plant it in Fallen Star Yard. It had a formation of its own and was portable. With this core, her family would be much safer, and she would be able to take more risks. However, reality never turned out the way one hoped. The core told her that all of the magical beasts and plants in the Dragon's Gate were bound by spells. As long as the spells were still active, they could never leave this place. Since she couldn't take it away, Feng Wu decided to make good use of it. She had been knitting just then. She knitted the vine into a dense net, which was an idea she had gotten from her experience on the 8th floor. Therefore, when everyone else thought that Feng Wu had run out of options, she already had a plan and had started working on it. By now, Feng Wu had made the vine into a big net. Chapter 1358. Chapter 1358. An Ideal Future Husband. The laughing cuckoos were still guffawing and sneering at Feng Wu when they were ensnared in the net. Whoosh! With a swift movement, the net caught all 999 birds. Outside the dragon's gate, some were excited, some disappointed, and some cried until they collapsed. I can't believe it. This Feng Wu is such a genius. She took something away from the 8th floor and used it on the 9th floor. Is this really her first time taking the challenge? Just when everyone thought that Feng Wu was going to rush to the 10th floor, which was the start of the hell level, Feng Wu stopped. Not only did she stop, she also turned around and walked up to the net. A transparent vial was hanging under the net, and it was now filled with that toxic inky liquid. It was taken from all the laughing cuckoos. As for the birds themselves, the purple vine had already crushed them. Gosh, Feng Wu has so much inky liquid now. It'll be so beneficial for cultivation. After she comes out, I'll try to buy some from her. Me too. Just then, Xiaoyi spoke in a cold voice. Have you forgotten the bet? That immediately woke everyone up. They suddenly realized. Oh God. I put in 3,000 points. I put in 5,000. It's 10,000 for me. Despair filled their hearts, and they were all shocked. Judging by the loud wails, most of the people here had bet on Feng Wu not passing the elite level. Every member of Tiger Head looked defeated, except for Leng Hu. Aren't you sad? They all looked at her. She glanced at the others and said, That's not what I bet on. Gu Hongling said, Did you bet on her not passing the difficult level? Leng Hu rolled her eyes at him. Do I look like an idiot to you? Why would I do that? Then what did you bet on? The others all looked at Leng Hu. Leng Hu raised her chin. What do you think? They asked. It's not the hell level, is it? Leng Hu asked, Why not? Don't you hate Feng Wu the most? Why did you bet on that? Leng Hu rolled her eyes again. I hate her, but I don't hate the idea of more points. The others were rendered speechless. Staring at her, they said, We thought you didn't think Feng Wu would do well. Leng Hu stared at them, as if they were idiots. I don't. But I do have faith in young Lord Feng and His Royal Highness's judgment. That was a very reasonable argument. Right now, Feng Sun was the happiest person in the crowd. Ha ha ha, Chaoga. Many people bet that Feng Wu would stop at the elite level, didn't they? The crowd around him didn't look too happy. Chaoga nodded and said matter-of-factly, The total pool is 2 million points, and a little over 1 million of them was for Feng Wu not passing the elite level. Adding in those who bet that Feng Wu would fail at the common and difficult levels, that's 1.5 million points. The other 500,000 points are on her making it to the hell level. Chaoga said. However, no one has even mentioned the insane level. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.